Table of Contents, Chapter 1, The Beginning Chapter 2, My Tree Fort Chapter 3, A King's Descendant Chapter 4, Mystery Balls Chapter 5, Dark Room Fears Chapter 6, The Mock Moons Chapter 7, Mountain Sphere Chapter 8, A Voice in the Night Chapter 9, Contact Chapter 10, Manifestations Chapter 11, Pastor's Ideas Chapter 12, Wohler Bridge Chapter 13, The Triangle Ship Chapter 14, Terror Drive Chapter 15, 7 White Spheres Chapter 16, Discovery of the Holy Roman Empire Chapter 17, The Unexplained Explained Chapter 18, Security Camera Falling Sky by Michael Davis. Copyright 2011 by Michael Davis. Chapter 1 The Beginning. This stories based on actual events and certain names have been changed to protect the identity of those wishing no mention. My alien abductions began as a young boy, around 4½ years old, and continued throughout adulthood. The picture below was taken by my mom and is of me at that age. Parents, while reading this chapter, keep in mind how young I was and what happened to me then. Imagine it happening to your son without you knowing it. I lived in an Eichler home while being raised by my dad and mom, my 3 brothers and 1 sister in the small community of Lucas Valley located in Marin County, California. The house was designed and built with an inner atrium which was a center enclosed area with open roof where you could see the sky and stars. It was absolutely awesome, and I remember on hot summer nights my brothers and I would sleep out under the stars in sleeping bags on lounge chairs. In those days my parents figured murders, burglars, and crooks didn't come in by rooftops, so we were safe. As far as they knew, bad elements only came in by door or window, so we were fairly protected behind a locked front door, or so they thought. Being kids, we enjoyed falling asleep under the stars, pointing out and identifying the different systems while fantasizing about them. Being the youngest and not knowing too much, I'd listen as they'd talk about the different constellations, and their chattering would go on for a bit. It normally didn't take too long before all 5 of us were sleeping, and that's when the peaceful chirping noises of crickets began. I don't know why, but, for some reason, their cumulative sounds composed a peaceful, tranquil effect, causing a feeling of security. Being a kid, they actually made it easier for me falling asleep. We used to say watch out if you didn't hear them, because it usually meant someone was approaching. I generally thought of them as some sort of warning device, almost like guards. When I couldn't hear them, I'd usually wake discovering an approaching cat trying to come in by rooftop. Because the drop was too high and no real way in or out, they'd briefly peek down on us, change their mind, and quietly leave. Usually moments after they're gone, the crickets started back up, advising everything's once again all right. One particular night their alarm of silence sounded as the crickets gave a quiet warning. Their loud chattering quit, which caused an eerie muteness, instantly ripping me from a dead sleep. I opened my eyes and saw 3 hooded creatures standing next to me, poised as if they'd just caught me, like a cat over its prey. I couldn't really see features and only saw black hoods draped over the top of their heads, exposing only parts of faces. All of them were the same height, being very short, standing around 3 to 4 feet and dressed in what appeared as shiny black silk pajamas with legs almost like a martial artist would wear. The garments appeared to be one piece with no visible seams, which makes no sense, wondering how they put them on. Reflecting back to their black hood head coverings, I'd liken them to typical Grim Reaper style. The sight of them terrified me so badly that I actually remember wetting my pajamas and sleeping bag. Sensing my fright, one said, "Don't be scared, we're not here to hurt you." Petrified out of my wits, I asked, "Who are you?" One of them replied, "We're your parents." Being very confused, I said, "You aren't my parents, my mom and dad are in the house sleeping in bed." Another said, "Those which you call mom and dad are only your guardians. They will watch out for you while you grow up, but we're your actual parents." I was still extremely confused, wet and frightened, and wanted them to go away. I tried screaming, but something was stopping me, and that's when one of them said, "We're taking you with us for now, then we will bring you back." I wanted to say no, but something was stopping me. Why my brothers didn't wake, I couldn't tell you. It was almost like they were unable to hear anything at all, but I heard them snoring. The next thing I remember was waking up in the morning with wet pajamas along with a matching sleeping bag. In the morning, when I went into the house, my dad's response to the wet p.j.s was, "Why didn't you get into the house to go to the bathroom instead of wetting yourself? What's wrong with you? I hope you didn't wet the sleeping bag too." Being afraid he'd slap me and not knowing what else to say except the truth, I started crying as I replied, "Some weird guys came in to talk to me last night and I got scared and couldn't hold it." Hating it when I cried, Dad scolded me and ordered, "Stop whining like a baby, nobody's hit you yet." Knowing I'd better stop, and while taking a few more sniffles, I asked, "Who were those guys that came into the atrium and took me away last night?" Calming down while scratching his bald head, he asked, "What guys came in the atrium?" Not knowing how to properly answer, I replied, "I don't know, but they took me with them, then put me back in my sleeping bag." After pondering my response a bit, an extremely odd expression grew about his face as he said, "That's it, you're not sleeping out there anymore." Quickly avoiding the subject, he commanded, "Go get cleaned up and changed before breakfast, and whatever you do, don't wake your mom. I don't want to hear her damn griping this morning." After finishing in the bath, I went to the kitchen table where Dad said, "Hey dummy, you did piss the bag." I could tell he was totally disgusted with me as he said, "What's wrong with you, you know better." Hanging my head in shame, he ordered, "Go on and eat your waffles before I decide to slap your face for destroying an expensive sleeping bag." Not wanting to make him even madder, I quickly started scarfing down a waffle and listened to his lecture as he further scolded, "That thing was brand new, I just bought all those sleeping bags and they cost a fortune. What do you care?" Peeking up from the plate, I quietly replied, "I care." No, you don't care, you don't even think about the money. You're just a kid that thinks money grows on trees." "No, I don't," I replied. "I know money doesn't grow on trees, cause you have to work real hard for it to feed us." Sticking his tongue out and rolling it under and pressing it up against his teeth out of anger, I knew he was furious as he waved his hand out readying to strike me, then yelled, "Don't talk back to me. Just shut up and listen before I slap you good dummy." Mom, obviously hearing the ruckus, came out from their bedroom and wiping sleep from her eyes, she asked, "What's going on out here? What's all the noise about?" Seeing Mom awake and not realizing it was his shouting responsible for doing so, he yells, "Oh great, I told you not to wake her up, and what did you do? You went and woke her anyway, I warned you." "What is going on?" cried Mom. "Dum-Dum pissed his pajamas and sleeping bag," shouted Dad. Taking a seat at the table, Mom said, "Oh Will, don't be so hard on him, he's only 4½ Losing his temper and throwing the mixing bowl into the sink, he yelled, "There you go, taking his side as usual." My brothers and sister began arriving at the table, so being full, I decided to slip away in the excitement. I quietly got up, and while making my way to the sliding glass door, he spotted me and yelled, "Hey, where are you going? You're the one who started it all." Freezing in my spot, I turned and with my head down replied, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to start anything, and I'm just full, so I was going to play in my tree fort." Knowing it was an escape attempt, he yelled, "Play, play, play, that's all you do." Mom, getting equally pissed at him as he was at me, yelled, "Stop it, Will." Turning towards me, she advised, "Yes, get out of here and go play, honey." Hearing this, Dad yelled, "Hey, I wasn't done with him yet." Protecting me, she quickly ordered, "Go, and go now." Taking her cue, I quickly jammed toward the door, and as I was closing it behind me, I heard Mom as she yelled, "What's wrong with you, Will? He's just a little kid. Didn't you ever have accidents as a child? It's terrible the way you treat your kids." "Ah, shut up, you moron," I could hear him yell. "Why don't you?" shouted Mom. Their back and forth argument continued, echoing throughout the yard the entire time I played. My mom was a very protective mom, and she'd taken many blows for me before. She didn't like the way he was with her or the kids, and it always turned out this way, leading to a fight. She was right about him, and all of us kids knew it, as he'd slap each and every one of us when the mood struck him. My brothers and sister knew better than to say a word when he was like this, or he'd turn on them too. For some reason, even though he was an abusive tyrant to us, I still loved him. Children are very forgiving, and it's not till later in life when they build up resentments towards parents, siblings, and others for the way they've been treated. Why Mom didn't just take us kids and run, I'll never know, but maybe it's just because she was as scared as us. Chapter 2, My Tree Fort. It was later that same year, right after starting kindergarten, I arrived home from school at around noon. Our house was right behind the schoolyard, with my tree house overlooking it all. Mom loved the idea that my fort was visible from the kitchen window so she could keep an eye on me while I played. I had a little white poodle which I trained to do all kinds of tricks, including riding in a basket while being hoisted up to the fort. He didn't mind and actually seemed excited when I lowered it down for him to hop in. That little dog jumped right in, and when I pulled the rope through the pulley lifting him up, he remained completely still. When it reached the edge of the fort, I'd hold the rope and he'd hop right out onto the plywood floor. I sincerely believed Petey liked being up there with me as much as I did having him. Mom thought it was extremely cute the way he did that and used to tell all her friends about it. They were simply amazed how I trained him to do so, but it really wasn't that difficult at all. I placed a dog biscuit in the basket while on the ground and then another on the plywood floor at the top of the fort. I'd call him, then he'd hop right in, and while chewing the first treat I'd hoist him to the top. By the time he reached the fort he'd be finished chewing the first, then spotting the second he'd hop out retrieving it too. While eating the second one I lowered the basket back to the ground, therefore trapping him in the fort with me. I didn't have to trick him on the way down because by then he was very eager to leave and wanted down. Using biscuits as bait, much like a lure for fishing, I was able to teach him many tricks, including climbing a 6-foot ladder. This one was easy and only required placing dog treat baits on each ladder rung. He'd climb one step at a time, eating while eating one biscuit at a time, finally making it to the top. It didn't require much thought because after reaching the last step, he'd be stuck not knowing how to get back down. His food desire far outweighed a safety instinct which wasn't using logical cognitive thought, therefore leaving him dependent upon others for help. Most people thought he had smarts, but I figured he wasn't too bright after all, because he always wound up in a challenging position. No, it wasn't intelligence making him do the tricks, and moreover, stupidity, as he always found himself in a compromising situation relying on me for help. The only thing he really understood was his food drive and would do anything for it. Just because he wasn't born with brains didn't bother me because I still liked and considered him my friend. I could see much of the school grounds from the tree where I spent countless hours watching the older kids playing ball in the field. Being so little I wanted to join them, but simply wasn't old enough. I'd watch and watch, waiting for my older brother's return home from school. Because the pathway leading from there to home ran between the neighbor's house and ours, I had a great view of everyone walking that course. I remember Mom asking what I did up there all that time and recall telling her, "Me, Petey and God are watching the bigger kids playing ball." Thinking back, it seemed a peculiar thing for such a young child to say, but then again, who knows, maybe I wasn't ordinary. Mom thought it was cute, while I truly believed God actually was with me and my dog watching the games. Being Catholic along with attending Catholic school, she was raised that way and was constantly instilling the concept that God was everywhere and watching everyone. Because she taught me so young, I absolutely believed what she told me, so God was with us. This day, I hoisted Petey down to the ground, then went back into the house to watch television. While entering through the sliding glass I saw Mom in the kitchen and she asked, "Where were you?" Wondering why she's asking, I replied, "In my tree fort. You saw me there through the window." "No you weren't," she said, "I looked out the window and you weren't in your fort. When I couldn't see you I searched the yard, but you weren't there either." Being very upset she asked, you went to the schoolyard without asking, didn't you? Knowing I never left the tree I replied, no I didn't, I was there the whole time. Michael Davis, she said, you took off without even mentioning it, you know you need someone to watch you. You're way too little to be wandering off whenever you please without asking. When you took off you also left Petey in the tree alone and I couldn't get him down. I couldn't reach the rope, pulley, or basket so I couldn't even get the poor little frightened dog down. He was terrified being up there all alone without you. I was waiting for either you or one of your brothers to come home so they could get him down for me. She pointed at me and yelled, young man, don't you ever do that again. Standing my ground, still certain I never went anywhere I said, but Mom, I didn't go anywhere, I promise. Putting her hands up she ordered, that's it, I don't want to hear another word. I've told you what I expect and I'm done talking about it. Thinking she must have been blind for not seeing me I said, but. Cutting me off she scolds, no more, I don't want to hear any more. Noting my frustration she tried explaining, you don't understand that the reason I'm so angered is because I love you very much. If you wander off and I don't know where you are anything could happen to you. Wondering what could actually happen to me I asked, like what? Shaking her head she replied, like somebody could kidnap or steal you for one thing. Not to mention like getting hurt with nobody to help you for another. Confused about the lecture I said, but, I didn't go anywhere without you. Thinking I was arguing she shouted, no more about it young man. That's all I want to hear. As I already told you, I love you so now go watch television in the playroom. Knowing it was no use telling the truth because she didn't believe me anyway I reluctantly said, okay. While watching my programs I wondered why she didn't trust me. I knew I was there the entire time but, she still didn't believe me. She actually thought I made up a fib about being in the tree all because I went to the schoolyard. Me going to the schoolyard unnoticed would have been impossible as I wasn't able to climb down the fence because it was simply too high off the ground. I might have been able to jump but, then I'd never be able to climb back up without a ladder. The fort had a rickety ladder from the ground up and that's how I got up and down so, without it I couldn't get back up. At that time there was no gate to the field yet so there was no way out unless I snuck around the side yard. I couldn't get through those gates because you had to reach over the top to operate the latch and I was too short. The only way out was either through the house, which she would have seen me or jumping but, then I couldn't get back up. A gate to the field wasn't put in until a couple of years later. Chapter 3 A King's Descendant When I was 8 my parents moved from the Eichler in Marin to a town called Petaluma located in Sonoma County. By the time I reached 12 we were living on a rural farm about 12 miles outside town. The place where we lived used to be an old stagecoach stop on the way to Valley Ford and it was very isolated. The picture below is what the house looks like today and it appears to be abandoned since we moved out around 1974. It's completely overgrown with weeds and it looks like nobody's been there in years. Living there and being so young and isolated from friends and social activities on top of not having a driver license became a real boring drag. Watching television without cable using only an antenna because you live outside of cable service area wasn't too exciting either. Putting it bluntly, if I didn't have some sort of hobby, I'd probably have gone crazy with boredom so that's when I got into photography. Mom told me if I took a photo class in school and did well with it she'd see what they could do about setting me up a darkroom in one of the barns. I was stoked and that gave me enough drive to receive an A in the course. After seeing the report card Mom and Grandma pulled money together and set me up with a black and white, color transparency darkroom which included a color enlarger, a processing tank for color transparency film and all trays needed for black and white prints. Basically, she bought me everything required to set up and do my own photo processing. We had 2 barns which Dad allowed me to utilize the center tack room, located in one of them, to convert into my darkroom. Because it was a very old barn there were gaps in the boards which allowed cracks of light to seep in. A dark room with light leaks wasn't good, so I did my best to block it out with sheets of black plastic and cardboard. It may have been makeshift, but I was able to make it work if I developed the film at night, keeping the outer barn lights off. Having my own darkroom allowed my total devotion to photography, so I began landing wedding job photo shoots, charging $175 per occasion. I spent after-school nighttime hours processing film and printing pictures, because not only was it when I had the time, but also when the barn was its darkest. Mom didn't mind me being out there at night because I was busy doing something productive with photos, and besides, the dark room had a locked door, so she felt I was relatively safe. Grandma Irene moved down from Washington State to be closer with her daughter, which was also my mom. Along with her came my two half-aunts from another marriage and their cat Tiger. With Mom working nights, I started bonding with Grandma, and soon the two of us were best friends. She taught me to play card games like solitaire and rummy, but refused to teach me poker or blackjack. My dog fell in love with her, then she became his person, and seeing how much she loved him back, I didn't mind at all. I liked Humphrey and really didn't mind sharing him with her. Besides, I also had a white-spotted Appaloosa horse named Heaney, who was really my best friend. I was the only one in the family who could ride him except for my brother-in-law. The rest of the family didn't like him much because he was so spirited and didn't go around them. Heaney and I were quite attached, and whenever he saw me he'd come running, cause I usually had an apple, carrots, celery, molasses/oats, and I was the only one who cared. Needless to say, that darn horse liked me as much as most dogs do their person. Anyone who's ever had a horse friend knows you don't own them, but moreover, they own you, similar to cats and their owners. Grandma and I used to spend time before dinner, before Dad came home, playing card games together. She didn't like him very much because of the way he was always treating my mom and I. During one of our games she said, "You know, your ma should take you and Richie with me and the girls and move away from that dictator father of yours." Agreeing with her, but knowing what he'd do if we left, I said, "Yeah, but he'd just hunt us down, then things would be worse." She was absolutely disgusted with him beating me and said, "He's a big bully, brute who picks on women and children. Mikey, you don't see it, but he's a very bad man, and he and your ma should never have gotten together. He beats you." Still loving my dad by aiding his defense, I said, "He hits me, but he always says he's sorry after." Knowing he had me terrified, she said, "He was a bastard foster child who never knew of his own father. He was a violent boy who took a baseball bat after his own mother, and that's why he was taken away by social workers, then placed in foster care." Looking me right in the face and pointing, she said, "You come from royalty and don't ever forget it." Not knowing what she's getting at, I asked, "What do you mean by saying I come from royalty?" "I mean just what I said," she said, "you come from kings and queens." Never before hearing anything about this, I asked, "What king, what queen, why haven't I ever heard about this?" "Maybe your ma never mentioned it to you, but I will," she explained. "My grandma Anna became pregnant by a Roman prince, then she was sent to Kansas to marry Michael Goss. The prince was pre-arranged to marry another in the royal line, so that's why they got rid of my grandma, the royal chambermaid." Flabbergasted by the news, I said, "You're kidding me." Wondering which empire I'm from, I asked, "So which king am I a descendant of?" "Which king doesn't matter," she replied, "what matters is they'd have your father's head on a platter for beating you the way he does. Don't ever forget me telling you this." It wasn't until way later in life, after receiving a detailed family tree from my mom's cousin, that I found out which kingdom it was I descended from. Shortly after, Dad and Grandma had a run-in where he told her to get the hell out of his house, and she said, "Gladly, you bully." I never forgot it because both my dog and I were really sad to see her leave. We both felt like we're losing two very good friends. Because Grandma and my two aunts were gone, it left Dad, Mom, my brother Rich and I still at the farm. Chapter 4 Mystery Balls. It was late summer of 1973, around August/September, as the blackberries were ripe and waiting to be picked. Grandma bribed my mom, my brother Rich and me with lots of jam and pies if we went out and picked the berries. Because we all love jam and pie so much it didn't take too much arm pulling to get us to do the job. We grabbed our buckets and pans then went out to gather the berries. The best place was behind one of the barns as that's where most of the bushes were and I found myself a perfect nook in the bushes just filled with ripe berries. I'd pick some then eat some and while gathering my bucket full I noticed an orange orb fly out one of the barn windows then head straight for me. I didn't think too much about it until it approached me and hovered right next to me in the nook. My hands were filled with blackberry juice so I wiped them on my pants then stared at this orb which was about half the size of a basketball. It simply floated in the air then suddenly I saw a face appear inside it almost like a balloon with a face in it. It was a very odd looking face and it seemed to be studying me as I was it. Being totally amazed I yelled, "Mom, quick come here, there's a ball with a face in it next to me." Mom raced over and right as she reached the nook where I was the orb reduced its size then shot into a hole in the middle of the bushes completely disappearing. Mom looked and not seeing it she asked, where is it?" Pointing to the hole in the middle of the bushes I replied, "It disappeared into the bushes." "Right as you got here." "Michael, I don't see anything," said Mom staring into the hole I was pointing to. "I'm telling you, it was here and that's where it went," I cried. Taking her glove off then patting me on the head she asked, "Honey, are you sure you weren't just imagining it?" "No, I'm telling you, it was there," I cried again. "You don't believe me," I said being so upset that I couldn't show it to her or prove it. "It's all right, I believe you," said Mom, "let's finish up picking berries so we can have some jam and pies." It bothered me so much that I wasn't able to prove what I was saying and it's all I thought about while picking the rest of the berries. I kept looking into holes in the bushes trying to find where it went but couldn't find it again, at least not this time. About a month later Dad told me to cut the lower branches off the pear tree behind the house. He instructed that he put the limb saw on the porch then told me to get the ladder from the barn and cut off all the lower branches which were in the way when he mowed the lawn. I took the saw and ladder around the backside of the house then assessed the tree finding the branches he was talking about. The really low branches I didn't need the ladder for so I began cutting them first. Right as I started sawing the first branch a very small orange orb about the size of a tennis ball appeared in the upper branches. I immediately stopped sawing and examined the orb which had a face in it. It seemed to be examining me as I was it and it looked just like the one I saw in the blackberry bushes. This time I was scared so I ran into the house and told Dad what I saw. Running through the door I cried, "Dad, there's something up in the tree." Because I interrupted his game he yelled, "What's up in the tree?" "I don't know," I replied, "it looks like an orange glowing tennis ball with a face in it." Jumping up from his chair he yelled, "I'm so sick of this crap, you're so damn lazy you'll think of anything to get out of work. Come on let's go see what's up in that tree dummy." When we arrived to the tree he looked up and said, "You moron, there's nothing up there." Realizing it was gone I cried, "But there was, I'm telling you, it was up there." "There's nothing there." He yelled, "Give me the damn saw, I'll cut the branches while you drag them to the dump trailer." As he climbed the ladder he began cutting the first branch then suddenly the ladder began moving and he almost fell so he yelled, "Hold the damn ladder you idiot or I'm likely to fall and break my neck." I knew he didn't believe me and the way he acted over it all really hurt my feelings. I was just a kid and had absolutely no support at all from my dad regarding any of what I was seeing. He simply treated me as if I was a moron and seriously believed I was making it all up just to get out of work when I wasn't. It wasn't until a little later on when he finally realized there actually was something out there. One early morning, around spring of 1974, my brother Rich and I were walking to the school bus stop about halfway up the hill from our house. There was wet dew along the trees, bushes, grass, and road which was being warmed by the rising sun creating evaporation therefore causing tulle fog. My brother reached the stop, I was around 50 feet down the road from him when I heard an extremely weird, somewhat quiet, high-pitched noise coming from across the road. It sounded similar to the humming of tubes in an old television warming up after first being turned on. Turning then glancing in its direction, I witnessed two of the oddest objects hovering out of our neighbor's driveway. They were very small, brightly glowing, orange balls or spheres which hovered in our direction. Effortlessly, they sailed about 5 feet above the ground, making little noise and were about the size of basketballs. Circling each other they headed straight for me, then paused a few feet from my face. While hovering they didn't move but rotated in place while almost examining or probing me for a few seconds. Not having a clue what they were, I became both frightened and enchanted, so I froze and watched while they did their thing. At this point they were inches from my face when they instantly departed, heading up the road towards my brother. They circled each other a few times before stopping right in front of him, now hovering inches from his face. Reacting differently than I, in disbelief he shook his head, then swatted and shooed them away like one would do to flies or bees. In response to his reactions they instantly took off and continued on their way, heading uphill. After I approached the stop we both watched as they reached the hilltop. Once at the crest they took off, shooting straight up into the sky, completely disappearing above the trees and out of sight. We looked at each other, both in shock and not saying a word because neither one of us knew what they were or what just happened. Right then our bus came over the crest, headed down toward the stop, then finally stopped, opening the doors letting us on. I walked down the aisle, behind my brother, while scanning the bus for vacant seats, possibly next to someone I knew. Finding one in front of my friend Bert, I quickly sat, then turned and asked, "Hey Bert, did you just see the balls that shot straight up into the air right when the bus came over the crest of the hill?" With a strange expression he asked, "What are you talking about, Mike?" I reiterated and replied, "Those orange balls, the ones that shot straight up in front of the bus." Busting out in laughter he yelled, "Hey everyone, Davis is seeing imaginary orange balls flying up in the sky." "Ha, ha, 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 you're a nut, Mike." Totally ridiculing me he snidely yelled, "Davis, have you been drinking this morning?" "Yeah, that's real funny," I said. "Go figure you didn't see them." Knowing he probably did but just didn't want his friends to know, I said, "Don't tell me you didn't see them, you're just too embarrassed to admit it because you're scared about your friends' ever-growing low opinion of you." Being offended by my statement he countered and warned, "Now Mike, don't go there." Admitting to seeing something but not knowing what, he quickly made up his probable excuse by explaining, "They were car tail lights and you know it." Arguing with him I said, "Hey Bert, car tail lights wouldn't be coming towards the bus but in front moving away." "Ha," I asked, "then why were they heading for the bus?" Realizing it was $1 million question and not having a rational, logical answer he replied, "They were headlights then." Quickly reminding him I said, "You need to make up your mind because moments ago you stated they were tail lights, now they're headlights." Simply amazed by his reasoning I asked, "Which one was it, headlights or tail lights?" Giving him a moment without a reply I reminded, "Remember, tail lights and headlights are on opposite ends of the vehicle." So I asked once again, "How could you see tail lights coming at you?" Waiting but hearing his silence I said, "Yeah, just as I thought, you can't answer." Quickly snapping he replied, "They were tail lights, now no more about it." "They weren't either and you know it," I said. Glancing over to my brother sitting in the other seat I asked, "Hey Rich, what were they?" Shaking his head from side to side, not wanting to discuss it, he put his hands in the air and waving them my direction while dismissing me he replied, "I don't know now, shush, I don't want to talk about it." I made repeated attempts trying to talk to Rich about it and each time receiving the same response, he didn't know what they were and or didn't want to talk about it at all. On one occasion he finally admitted to me that he really didn't know what they were and stated it was really weird. I asked myself, were they environmental probes? Were they alien spacecrafts? Capable of changing shapes and sizes? Were they entities from another dimension? Were they angels from God? Were they demons from Satan? One thing I knew is they weren't a normal sight and their place of origin couldn't be Earth. It wasn't until much later in life when I began figuring it out. It was around 2 weeks later when memory of the incident was recalled once again. Dad came home from work with a similar bizarre story and explained by telling me, "Mike, I saw the strangest thing coming home tonight. When reaching halfway down the hill I looked to the right and over in our field I saw two tail lights of a car just there." Being unsure if what he's talking about is what I saw, I asked, "What type of car were they on?" Confused and scratching his head he replied, "That's exactly what's weird because they weren't connected to any vehicle and were alone in midair." Realizing he must have seen what I did but, remembering how badly he treated me when I told him about things I'd seen, I gave him a bit of his own medicine and treated him insane while asking, "Car lights not connected to any car but, in midair in the middle of the field, are you sure about this, Dad?" Bewildered he replied, "Yeah, it was the darndest thing. There were red car tail lights in our field which weren't connected to any car, then all of a sudden they disappeared." Enjoying the moment by watching him squirm I said, "You do know tail lights must be connected to cars, so, I think you're just seeing things that aren't there. You know, Dad, you should get your eyes checked." Shaking his hands, attempting to dismiss it, he reluctantly agreed, "Yeah, you're right, I probably need my eyes checked. Tail lights have to be on cars and can't be in midair." "That's right," I said, "you're just seeing things and need your eyes checked." Feeling a bit insane he agrees again, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. The field gates are locked and no cars could get in, so my eyes must be playing tricks on me." Brushing it off he looked in the kitchen and asked, "What's for dinner?" Chuckling to myself I asked, "Did you ever think that just maybe they weren't car lights but, something else?" Sweeping it further under the carpet he replied, "No, it couldn't be anything else, so I had to be seeing things." Heading towards the kitchen he said, "Never mind, I'll just put on some hot dogs." Chapter 5 Darkroom Fears. My brother Rich finally received his driver license, bought a car, and from then on we didn't see him much. He was usually gone, staying at some friend's or whatever else, but never home. I can't say that I blamed him because I wished I could be gone too, but I was just too young for a license. That big farmhouse was getting rather large as there was only my mom, my dad, and me living there. Mom felt bad for me because she had to work nights leaving me home alone with Dad. I wanted a pierced ear with a cross-stud earring, so I asked Mom and she didn't mind. She brought me to the piercing shop, and when finished I came home with exactly what I wanted, a cross earring. I should have known better than to show it to my dad because he hit the ceiling when I did. That weekend he was drinking while watching the game on television and his team was losing, putting him in bad mood. He always got mad when his team lost, with this time no different than the others. Usually when he was like this I'd remain hidden out in my room, avoiding him like the plague. That day I heard him fighting with Mom and it was getting fairly loud. He stormed through the kitchen, then barging my door open he yelled, "Where are you, you lazy bastard?" I was sitting at my desk, looking over film negatives trying to stay out of his way when I replied, "I'm right here, Dad." Seeing me in the chair looking at film all the while his team's losing just pissed him off to no end, so he screamed, "Get up and come here right now." Knowing I'd be beaten anyway, I still got up and stood before him and asked, "Yes, Dad." Staring me in the face he yelled, "You lazy, worthless, so, you missed quite a few piles of dog crap in the yard and your room's a mess. Why in the hell are you looking at film when there's work to be done?" Scared half to death I replied, "I don't know, Dad, you're right, I should be cleaning right now." My answer pissed him off even more, so as he started staring at the cross earring he screamed, "What are you, a little faggot? Why are you wearing this faggot earring?" Trying to make him happy I asked, "Do you want me to take it out, Dad?" "Don't bother, I'll do it for you," he yelled. Grabbing it with his fingers he ripped it through my earlobe. After throwing the cross clear across the room he placed both hands around my neck, then lifted me against the wall. With my feet off the ground and squeezing on My throat, he screamed, I ought to kill you, you little queer. Losing bladder control and pissing my pants, I began passing out from strangulation. Realizing he was actually killing me, he placed me back on my feet, grabbed me by my hair, lifted me up, then kicking me across the room into the chair, he yelled, "It's your entire mother's fault." Mom was screaming in the kitchen, "Stop, will please stop, you're killing him." Turning his attention toward her, he yelled, "You stop, you stupid bitch." Refocusing his attention towards me and noticing me on the floor, he screamed, "Get up, what are you, a mouse, a faggot?" I didn't say a word and simply lay there as I listened to Mom plead, "Will, the fight's between us, please leave Mike out of it, I'll do whatever you ask." With that he left the room, slamming the door behind, and all I heard was fighting in the kitchen. Later that evening, while he was outside, Mom informed me that she told him she was going to leave him if ever laid another hand on me. She also told me that he stated he'd hunt both of us down and kill us if she left with me. I went to school that Monday and the dean of students saw me with a fat lip, 2 black eyes, a torn earlobe, and strangle bruises around my neck. He called me to the office, closed the door, then asked, "Son, who did this to you?" Knowing it only get worse, I said, "I got in a fight with some kids." Obviously knowing I was covering for someone, he said, "Mike, I know what's going on, and all I can say is if it gets too bad, I can help, just get to the school and you won't have to deal with this anymore." Not wanting to be a foster child like my dad, I said, "It's okay, it was just a fight." About a week later he came and got me out of class, and in private he asked to see my wounds, especially my neck and torn ear. After showing it to him, he reiterated, "Remember Mike, I've been through what you're going through and I'm here for you. Now you know what to do when you want out of that situation." I probably should have taken his advice, but I just didn't think it would help. It was about a month later that my mom had an affair and left him for some guy at work, leaving me alone with him in that house. They wound up getting back together about 3 months later, but those 3 months without her were hell. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for God's guardian angels, I probably wouldn't be here writing this now. One Friday night I was working late on a photo project and finished up around 5 minutes till midnight. I'm sure of the time because I had a turnstile plug-in clock with a second hand that glowed in the dark, which I usually threw a towel over, stopping its luminance from streaking undeveloped film. Before closing up for the night, I habitually pulled the towel off, noticing the time around 11:55 p.m. I always left the barn lights out when working because, as already stated, the room wasn't exactly light tight and I needed it dark. After turning out the dark room light, I opened the door exiting into the barn. Being used to working in the dark, I locked the first door, then headed through the barn towards the second door, which exited to the farm parking lot. I usually walked very slowly, being careful not to trip over any of the uneven floorboards. Taking a few more steps, almost reaching the door, I heard noises which sounded like little kids running, and it was coming from the back of the barn by the stables. Wondering who it was, I yelled, "Who's there?" but there was no response. Straining through the dark, still not being able to see much, I took a few paces towards the pull chain light switch. Reaching for it, I glanced in the direction of the stalls when I see a face peeking around the corner. Without taking my eyes off him, I quickly grabbed the chain, then yanked it down, but no light appeared, probably because the bulb had burned out. Dropping my arm back to its side, I yelled again, "Who are you?" Whoever it was wasn't saying a thing, and I had no idea who it was. Because I was acclimated with the dark room, my eyes were swiftly adjusting, finally noticing an outline of a face. What I expected to see was a cat, but what I saw was no cat at all. It had 2 large black eyes that actually glistened in the dark, an oversized cranium, gray skin like you'd see on a dolphin, and shiny like it too, with 2 nostrils and a slit for a mouth. For some reason it seemed very familiar to me, like I'd seen it before, and I was terrified of it. It rotated its head side to side and kept staring at me just like I was doing to it. It was studying me for some reason, and I didn't know why, nor did I want to stick around long enough to find out. I panicked, turned, and ran straight for the barn door, shoving it open, heading directly toward the house. While running, it felt as if something was chasing me, and I heard an echoing almost like sonar, the type a mammal or dolphin uses for echolocation, and it was bouncing through the air, terrifying me. Once at the front gate, I didn't stop but ripped it open as I shot for the front porch. While entering the porch, I could still hear the continued echoing, and it was scaring the hell out of me. Thank God the door was unlocked, because I shot straight through, then slammed it behind me. After turning the skeleton key, locking it, I looked through the window to see what's chasing me. Hitting the yard floodlight switch, then quickly scanning the area, I couldn't see a thing. Suddenly I hear Dad from behind as he said, "It's getting a little late to be out in the darkroom. You should have been in here an hour ago." With my face pressed up against the glass, I fearfully replied, "Something was in the barn and it chased me to the yard." "Oh, don't give me that crap," yelled Dad. Realizing he was more concerned with controlling me than with what might have happened to me, for the first time in my life, I turned and yelled back at him, "I'm telling you, something chased me from the barn. I don't have a clue what it was either, and you're more concerned about the time I'm getting in." Totally ignoring me, he yelled, "You're supposed to be in here by midnight and it's after 1. Glancing at the kitchen clock, I said, "That clock must be wrong. I left the darkroom at midnight, but that clock shows 1:30. If you cared so much about me being late, then why didn't you come get me?" "I did," he yelled. "I was out there at 1 o'clock knocking on the darkroom door telling you to get in here, but you didn't answer. Why didn't you answer?" Not waiting a reply, he lectured me further and shrieked, "Next time, when I knock, you'd better open the door." Wanting to make sure I knew he was serious, he added, "That's it? No more darkroom for a week." In my defense, I argued, "But Dad, I'm telling you, one of the clocks must be wrong because I left the darkroom at midnight." Pointing to the kitchen clock, he said, "Look, it's after 1:30 now, and I know this clock isn't wrong because I just checked it with the time lady." Being insistent, I further argued, "Oh, come on Dad. Go check the darkroom clock, it must be wrong." Getting pissed at me for disputing the time, he screamed, "No. I'm not arguing about it or checking clocks. No more darkroom for a week, and get to bed now before I slap your smart mouth." Knowing I was home alone with him and Mom gone away with her boyfriend, I quickly shut my mouth. If he went off on me, there'd be no one to stop him, and he'd tear me limb from limb. I knew better than to keep going on. I picked the safe road and remained silent. The entire clock dispute bothered me terribly, so I waited until Monday when he went to work, then snuck back into the darkroom. Curiously enough, there wasn't anything wrong with the darkroom clock, and it read the same time as the kitchen clock. It was very strange because I knew I left the room at midnight, but I didn't make it back to the house until 1:30. It didn't make sense how a half-minute run turned into an hour and 1/2 of time. What happened to the missing time? What was the face I saw? Who or what was chasing me, and why? What was the strange sound I heard echoing in the night? Needless to say, that was the last time I ever went back to my dark room, and I refused to go outside at night alone. I never developed another roll of film or enlarged another print, as my processing nights were over for good. I didn't give up taking pictures, but decided to use commercial processing for film and prints. Shortly after this incident, Dad told me to come out to the barn with him because he wanted to show me something. I hadn't a clue what he wanted, but followed his orders and went anyway. He proceeded to the rear stables, the same ones where I saw the creature and heard the noises. This time Heaney was in the first stall, so Dad brought me to the one next to him. The place spooked me out, and I wasn't crazy about being there. Pointing to the shovel, hoe, rake and pitchfork in the corner of the stall, he said, "Son, those tools have been there since I put them there a week ago, and you haven't touched them once." Wondering what he was getting at, I asked, "So what am I supposed to do with them?" Getting pissed off as usual, he snapped, "What do you mean by asking what are you supposed to do with them?" Still not understanding what he's getting at, I said, "I must have forgotten, Dad, please forgive me." Remind me now and I'll do it. Grabbing me by the hair and lifting me off the ground and kicking me across the stall, he yelled, "Maybe this will remind you to shovel the crap out of the stalls." I hit the feed divider, landing halfway inside. Then I heard his voice getting closer as he screamed, "I think you need more reminders so you don't ever forget again." He picked me up by the neck and I knew for sure, he was going to kill me because my horse Heaney was freaking out. He was snorting and kicking the wall, trying to knock it down to get at my dad. Throwing me back to the other side of the barn, I landed in a pile of horse crap and simply laid there, not getting up. "Here, you still need more reminding," he screamed, lifting me back to my feet with my hair. By now my head was bleeding from missing clumps of hair and I knew I wouldn't last much longer. My poor horse was watching his person being taken out by his father and he was doing everything in his power to save me. He kicked and kicked, trying to smash down the wall divider when my dad dropped me on my feet. He saw something over at the other side of the stall that freaked him out. I dropped to the ground and while lying on the floor I watched him back away from me, almost like he was pushed by something. Picking my head up, I saw his body slam up against the other stall where Heaney was. Looking around, trying to find what shoved him, I saw nothing. His feet lifted off the ground and just when they did, Heaney kicked the stall one more time, sending Dad sailing across to the other side. I wasn't sure what was going on, but something had control of my father, throwing him about like a rag doll. Being the boxer he was and making his way back to his feet, he yelled, "Mike, quick, get out of here, go, go, go." Whatever it was scared him to death and took the 6'1" fighter to the ground in defeat. In my entire life I never heard him react this way when he screamed, "Son, get on your feet and run now." Quickly getting up, I took off in a sprint, heading for the house, hiding in my room. I waited about 10 minutes with no sign of him, then started wondering what happened. I wasn't about to go back to the barn to find out, but in about another 10 minutes he walked through the front door yelling, "Mike, where are you?" I was scared to come out because I thought he'd beat me more, so I continued hiding in the closet. I heard him yelling again, "Son, I'm sorry, forgive me. You don't have to clean the barn." Whatever happened to him petrified him good, so, feeling bad, I came out to see him and I asked, "What happened out there, Dad?" Avoiding the subject, he replied, "I don't want to talk about it. I'm sorry I did that to you and you don't deserve it at all. I love you and hope you can forgive me." Something happened to him out there, but he never told me what it was. All I know is there were some changes made afterwards as my mom and him got back together. He started attending church with her, he sold my friend/horse Heaney, then we immediately moved from that farm back to town. Chapter 6: The Mock Moons. It's now 1977, 3 years later, and we've moved from the rural country farm to the town of Petaluma, still located in Sonoma County. It's sometime in February and I'd acquired my driver license some 3 months ago. It's early evening, around 9 or 10, and I was sitting with my friend Spike in his Firebird at the top of Manor Lane in the Sonoma Mountains. It's a common town party spot where we'd usually hook up with other friends. Ordinarily I didn't drink too much, but tonight Spike had a trunk full of beer, so I shared just a few with him. Honestly, I usually only consume just enough to maintain my cool facade among friends. Quite often it was so little that they'd make fun of me by pointing out my inability in keeping up with their consumption. I was never really very crazy about drinking alcohol because all it ever did was make me tired. It was a cool, clear night and we surveyed over the small city from the dark mountain and watched small airplanes as they circled around, coming in for final approach at the Petaluma airport. The town would be still, then suddenly you'd see either a landing plane or car headlights. We were relying on AM radio because he didn't have a car system while engaging in what we thought to be deep, hypothetical, meaningful conversation. Our talk, really rather useless, kept going back and forth while asking each other stupid questions such as, "I wonder why this is that way and why that this way." Out of the blue he looks at the opposite West Mountain range and asks, "I wonder what that is." He was pointing at the huge harvest moon looming over the mountains, so I replied, "It's the moon, you idiot." Thinking him a bit crazy, I asked, "What's wrong with your head?" Completely ignoring me, he points south out the driver's window, then asked, "All right then, what's that?" I looked south and I saw another duplicate harvest moon, so glancing back to the first then back again at the second, I replied, "Now that's a very good question. I don't know. What's weird is it looks like there are two moons, but that's impossible." Once again pointing west, he said, "Mike, check it out, look. There are more of them. Now there's 1, 2, 3 moons over west with 1 moon to the south." Glancing west and noticing he's right, I said, "This is crazy, impossible, there can't be 4 moons." Pointing south toward the solo moon, I said, "Well, I'm guessing that's the real one." I pointed back toward the other 3, then asked, "What the heck are those?" Turning the key, starting the car, he replied, "I don't know, but they sure are strange and we're going to find out." Shifting in gear but not sure where he's going, he asks, "Hey Mike, what's over there?" Getting my bearings, I replied, "I think that's 2 Rock, where the Coast Guard base is." Racing down the hill, he asked, "You think or you know?" Reconfirming my first statement, I quickly replied, "Yes, it is the Coast Guard base and I'm sure of it." It didn't take long for him to rip through town, finally reaching the other side. Once at the outskirts, he punched it, heading west, speeding down Bodega Highway, towards the base. It took probably around 15 to 20 minutes making the trip from the mountains to the installation, so needless to say, by the time we arrived the 3 moons were long gone. He pulled up to the security checkpoint, and when he saw the guard open the door, he frantically asked, "Did you guys see the 3 moons in the sky over there?" The guard, looking at him like he's out of his mind, replied, "No, I don't recall seeing 3 moons tonight. I think I'd remember something like that." 3 moons, you say? So just how much have you two had to drink tonight?" Realizing this was heading in a bad direction, I quickly replied, "None, sir. None at all. We don't drink." Hoping Spike would get the hint and leave, I finished and said, "Thank you so much for your time, sir. You're right, we must have been seeing things, or maybe there was some sort of testing going on." Waving goodbye, I smiled and said, "You have a good night." Spike backed up and turned around, and while heading down the driveway he yelled, "What was all that garbage about?" "Thank you, sir, have a nice night, that's bull." Shaking his head in disgust, he said, "We weren't seeing things, we saw what we saw, and they actually were there. They weren't drunken delusion, they were there, and this joker seriously doesn't have a clue." As he pulled out onto the road, I said, "Spike, just leave. The guy obviously thinks we're both drunk or out of our minds and is probably calling in your license plate right now. I think the best thing we can do is leave before the cops show up. Don't you?" Stepping on the gas, racing out of there, he replied, "Yeah, you're probably right, we're gone." We headed back across town, to the mountains, where we first sighted the objects. Reaching our high school, about a mile before the foothills, he decided to pull into the student parking lot. Being so late and wondering why he was stopping, I asked, "Spike, what are you doing and why are we here?" Stopping on the pavement next to the dirt, he replied, "A pit stop, Mike, I need another beer." Worried about being on school grounds after hours with a trunk load of beer and getting busted, I said, "This is completely insane, we're going to get popped by the cops." "Spike, we need to go now, please let's just head to the mountains." Getting frustrated with me, he said, "Calm down, Mike, we're not going to get busted, I'm just grabbing a beer from the trunk, then we're leaving." While watching him hop out of the car, I said, "Hurry, please." Heading to the back and opening the trunk, he said, "Hold your horses, it'll only take a few seconds, then we'll leave." "Hey, do you want another cold one?" "No, not now," I said, "I'll wait till we get to the mountains." While he's digging around the trunk, taking forever, that's when I saw headlights entering the lot. While watching through the space between the trunk and the body of the car, the approaching lights became brighter and brighter as they got closer and closer. Spike became a silhouette as the vehicle pulled in behind us and turned on the spotlights. With the car lit up like Christmas, I heard a loudspeaker bellow, "Take your hands out of the trunk and put them in the air where we can see them." Turning back around, now facing forward, my adrenaline kicked in, causing my heart to race, and I said quietly to myself, "Oh, this is just great, it's the cops." Almost instantly the cop's loudspeaker ordered, "Passenger, stay in the vehicle." Sitting quietly, waiting my turn, I realized the security guard must have actually called the cops on us. They must have received a vehicle description and plate, then happened upon us while doing a patrol of the school grounds. I knew we shouldn't have pulled into that lot, and I told him to leave, but no, he didn't listen. I could hear them talking to Spike but wasn't able to make out the dialogue. By their argumentative vocal tones I could tell it wasn't going very well at all for poor Spike. Before I knew it, there was a cop at my window shining a flashlight right in my face. Tapping on the window, he ordered, "Hey buddy, roll it down now." Complying immediately, I said, "Yes sir officer, right away." Then began rolling down the window. Still shining the light in my eyes, blinding me, he ordered, "Let me see your ID or driver license." I pulled my wallet out, then after handing it to him he instructed, "Wait right here and don't go anywhere, I'll be right back." He headed to the squad car while I sat there waiting, thinking, this is fantastic, I'm probably going to be busted for a trunk of Spike's beer. Although I didn't have an arrest record and didn't wish one, glancing over and seeing the car keys sitting in the ignition gave me ideas about running. Knowing I'd never have the nerve to do it, nor would I have gotten away with it, I sat patiently waiting my verdict's return. I prayed so hard to God not to be arrested that night because I knew how my dad would have handled it. Suddenly hearing the sound of running water, then glancing right, I see the cop pulling a beer can top, then watched him dump it. He methodically opened each of them, then continued pouring them out one by one. When finished, he took another sixer out of the bag and did the same thing until all the beer was gone. He placed all the empties into the bag, then carried it back to the squad car, finally placing it into the trunk. He walked back to my window empty-handed, then asked, "You don't have any problems with me dumping that beer and giving you a warning, do you?" "No sir," I replied. "Warning me," he said, "if I see you out again tonight you'll be going to jail, so I won't be seeing you, will I?" I was thankful to God for blessing me by letting off with a simple scolding versus jail. I quickly thanked the officer too and replied, "No sir, I promise you won't see me out again, and thank you very much." Handing me back my license, he said, "Your friend Spike over there isn't so lucky. It appears he has an arrest warrant for a failure to appear, so he's going to jail." He shined the light back in my eyes, then ordered, "Open the door and step out of the vehicle." Wondering what he was doing now, but not wanting to ask, I simply complied by getting out. Shining the light back into my face, then placing his hand between us, he ordered, "Take a deep breath, then blow into my hand." I did exactly what he asked as he sniffed my breath for alcohol. Afterwards he instructed, "Stretch your arms out to your sides, tilt your head back and close your eyes, then using your index fingers of each hand touch the tip of your nose one at a time." I followed the instruction and did as he told me, touching my nose with one finger at a time. Explaining himself, he said, "You know, I dumped out quite a bit of beer, so I figured you didn't get too much of a chance to drink it." Giving me another look over, he said, "You don't appear to be intoxicated and seem okay to drive, so I'm wondering if you'd like to give your buddy a break by not having his car impounded. You could save him impound fees as long as you consent to driving it home for him." Wondering how Spike felt about me driving his Firebird, I asked, "What does Spike say about it?" The officer replied, "When I told him he's going to jail and the car's being impounded, he's the one who asked if you could take it home for him." Still thanking God that I'd be getting out at all, but feeling bad for Spike at the same time, I said, "Yeah, I know where he lives, I'll bring it home." Glancing back and seeing him being guided into the back seat with cuffs on, I yelled, "Hey Spike, I'll make sure your car gets home safely and I'll give the keys to your mom." Ducking his head while sliding in, he yelled, Mike, please tell my mom to come bail me out too. Yelling back I replied, don't worry, I will. Will then, you know what to do, said the officer shining the light on the key still hanging in the ignition. It seemed so weird that one moment the thought of driving off entered my mind and next the officer is giving me permission to take it and go. Not wishing to analyze it too much I walked around, hopped in the driver's seat then got ready to leave. Wondering why he was just standing there staring at me I asked, is there anything else officer? Turning off the flashlight then walking backwards towards the squad car he replied, no. We're just going to wait for you to leave school grounds then follow you out. We've decided to escort you part of the way until we reach your friend's street as it's on the way to the police department. Not being very excited about cops following me but, absolutely having no other choice, I did what they asked. Turning the ignition key and starting the car I said, all right then, I'm going to take off now. Smiling and waving goodbye, I put it in gear then drove away heading toward the gates. They followed me off the school grounds, all the way to Spike Street and that's when I became concerned, they kept following until I reached his driveway. They parked right behind me leaving their engine and lights running. Wondering why they're still there I hopped out and asked, this is where he lives, did you need anything else officer? No, replied one of them, we're just waiting to make sure one of his parents actually opens the door so go knock now would you please? I did exactly as he asked, walked up to the door, knocked then waited for either mom or dad to answer. Hoping one of them was home I became thankful and relieved when his mom answered. Seeing her face must have satisfied the cops' concerns because they immediately waved goodbye then drove away with Spike in the back. They never made a single attempt informing his mom that he'd been arrested and simply split. She hadn't a clue didn't that he was on his way to jail and obviously they didn't care to tell her. Needless to say, she wasn't very pleased about any of it and I didn't like being the messenger. I was very polite all the while keeping the conversation short. Obviously I knew the cops didn't trust me to safely deliver his car and that's why they followed me all the way to his house. Whatever the case, I was extremely thankful to be walking home to our subdivision late at night instead of being on my way to jail. Chapter 7 Mountain Sphere. It's later the same year, summer of 1977 and my brother Ron and I were heading to Manor Lane, the same mountains where Spike and I saw the mock moons. The ground was dry so he pulled out into the field then turned off his car parking on the grass. Although I was extremely tired, we both had dates and wanted to make the best of our Friday night. It was getting late, around 11:30 p.m. when in need of fresh air my brother and I stepped out of the car. We're standing in the middle of a cow pasture, smoking cigarettes while listening to music and stretching our legs. Hey brother, what do you think of these girls? Asked Ron while taking a hit off his smoke. Wanting sleep in a bad way I replied, I don't know. We just met them and I'm exhausted from school and work. Hitting my smoke I said, what I really want to do is go home and go to bed. Not wanting the party to end he asked, little brother, what's wrong with you? Shaking his head he said, the night's young. Glancing at his watch he exclaimed, it's only 11:35, you need to chill out. It's Friday night and we're here with two girls, wake up. Apologizing for my rudeness I said, I'm sorry man, I'm just really beat. Being totally disgusted, he took a last drag off his smoke then said, brother, I'm dead serious, there's something very disturbing about you. We're here in the mountains with two girls and you want to go home. You really need your head. Stopping mid-sentence he froze and began staring at something behind me then cried, what the hell is that? I turned and that's when I saw part of a large, round, orange, glowing dome rising just above the treetops about 100 yards away. I could see its brightness shining through the trees and realized it wasn't a dome but, more of a round sphere reaching all the way to the ground. With my jaw dropping I was flabbergasted and I replied, I don't have a clue. Further examining it I had a flashback then said, hey wait a minute. This reminds me of what Spike and I saw a few months ago above the West Mountain Range. With his eyes still fixed on it he asked, "What did you and Spike see?" Explaining I said, "I never mentioned it because I figured you'd just think I was crazy, but Spike and I saw 3 of those things hovering above the West Mountains. We thought they looked just like moons." Pointing to the south I continued, "And there was another one just over there. Spike and I jammed across town so fast trying to find those things, but by the time we got to the Coast Guard base they were long gone." "So," he asked, "did you talk to anyone at the base about what you saw?" "Yeah, we tried briefly," I replied, "but it just got weird. The guards thought we were drunk, crazy, or both, so we just split. What's even weirder is Spike got arrested that same night for a warrant and the cops simply let me go." Not listening because he was too busy watching the sphere, he grew frightened and said, "Damn, that thing is getting bigger. Check it out, it's twice the size it was a few seconds ago." Agreeing I said, "You're right, it is bigger." Now doubling in size, towering over the trees, I took a few steps closer then said, "Let's check it out." Thinking I was completely insane he yelled, "Little brother, get in the car, now, we're getting the hell out of here." Seeing him heading for the driver's door I yelled, "No, come on Ron, let's go check it out, maybe we can find out what it is." Hopping in then slamming the door closed he yelled, "I'm warning you, if you don't get in now I'm leaving you here, then you can walk home." Hearing the engine start and not wanting to be stranded in the mountains I screamed, "Hold on, I'm coming right now." He began pulling away, so I ran, heading for the passenger door, opened it then jumped in. He took off so fast the door automatically slammed closed, and in an instant and we were heading down the hill flying out of the mountains. Both of us were so tense that we almost forgot about the girls who were with us. We sped out of the mountains, reaching the country road home in what appeared to be a matter of seconds. Although we weren't saying too much, we couldn't help overhearing them shrieking from the back seat as one of them yelled, "Hey, what's going on with you two?" "Yeah, where'd you go?" asked the other, also pushing her face forward. Wondering what she's getting at, he asked, "What's wrong with you? Didn't you see that orange thing behind the trees?" Her friend replied, "No, we didn't see a thing except for the fact the 2 of you were missing for quite some time." Her friend chimed in and said, "Yeah, we were scared, we couldn't find you anywhere." Seriously wondering, she asked, "So, are you going to tell us where you were, or do we have to guess?" Thinking they were crazy I said, "We never went anywhere and were at the trunk listening to music, smoking our cigarettes while watching some weird glowing sphere." Wondering how they could have missed it I asked, "You mean to say you two didn't see anything?" Getting angered by thinking one of them must have touched his precious car stereo without permission, he yelled, "By the way, which one of you messed with my deck by turning it off?" One of them said, "We didn't touch your stupid little tape, it ended." The other snapped, "Neither one of you were anywhere around, so we turned it off after it finished playing." Still not receiving an answer, she asked, "Where were you two?" Being irate he replied, "It's like my brother said, we didn't go anywhere except to the back of the car for just a few minutes, so please stop asking where we were." Sliding back in the seat she cried, "You guys were gone about an hour. Your tape played both sides before we finally decided to turn it off." Being very annoyed he explained, "That's ridiculous, we stepped out of the car at around 11:30 and about the time the first song ended it was around 11:35. I know this because I was just telling Mike how early it was because he wanted to go home and go to bed at 11:35. Glancing at his watch he said, "It's now, wait a second, that's impossible." Watching him shake his wrist I asked, what is it?" Examining it he replied, "According to my watch it's 12:30 and that's impossible because we were only out there long enough to smoke 1 cigarette each." Being unaware that there was actually missing time I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "No, it makes perfect sense, your stupid cheap watch is broken and you might want to think about buying a new one." "I knew it," she said, "you guys were gone for an hour." Hearing this he yelled, "You stupid moron, I've already told you we were out there for about 5 minutes and you keep asking the same question. You really need to just sit there and be quiet while I sort this whole thing out. Agreeing with him about quiet being good, I said, that's a really good idea. Her friend who was my date said, yeah, if you don't wish to let us know where you were, that's cool, but, in light of this, why don't you just drop us off at the theater? This date has reached its end. Whatever, I said, drop them off, Ron. He headed straight for the theater and did just that, drop them off. We didn't talk about it for quite a while and it seemed strange, as if it never really happened. I began wondering if we actually saw what we saw. Then finally he approached me and asked, hey brother, do you know what it was that we saw up on Manor Lane? Remembering how he wanted to leave me in the mountains for trying to find out, I replied, I don't know, you were going to leave me if I didn't get in the car right then. If I didn't get in that second, I would have been walking home from the mountains that night. In a very serious tone he replied, that was God, we saw God. Being Catholic, this sounded extremely absurd, so I said, you're crazy, I don't know what in the heck it was, but I sure don't think it was God. Shrugging his shoulders he said, you may think I'm nuts, but let me ask you another question. Wondering where he's going with it, I said, go for it. Staring me in the eyes he asked, how would you know, have you ever seen God? Thinking about God's complexity and not being sure if I had, I replied, I don't know, I really don't know if I've ever seen him before. Chapter 8. A Voice in the Night. 5 years passed along with single life, ending all my dating. It's 1982, I'm married to my wife Susie and we have our first child, a year-old daughter named Angie. My parents owned a 7-acre farm located in a very small rural community outside West Petaluma, California. It was a little ways out and it took about 15 minutes to reach by car from the edge of town. Because we were living in a small apartment with Angie, Dad and Mom decided to give us a piece of property to build a small house on. My brother Ron and his family were offered the same, so we both built little houses in the country on Dad and Mom's farm right next to each other. I built our cottage in the middle of a field on the side of a hill and it was very secluded. My brother Ron built his just a little bit away from us, so he and I were the only neighbors for quite a distance. Our houses were totally secluded with 120 Monterey pine trees all around, providing quite a bit of privacy from the road, which was about 200 yards away. In order to reach our house from the farm parking lot, you had to go through the gate in the lower field, hike about 300 feet through a fenced sheep pasture, then go through another gate leading into our tree-lined yard. The entire scene was really quite picturesque and reminded us of something out of a children's storybook or maybe possibly even a horror movie. We assembled a swing set and slide right under the pines, which Angie and her cousin spent countless hours playing on. The place was awesome for children and we never worried about anyone ever kidnapping them from our secret hidden backyard. We used to say if a criminal actually made it to the cottage, you'd better have serious concerns because they'd have to be totally whacked out. Most people didn't visit us simply because it was too far out of town and the hike through the sheep field just a bit much. Simple grocery shopping was quite an event, requiring a large wagon with fat wheels in order to transport your things from the car parking lot to the cottage. The mud in the winter wasn't very fun either, but I guess it's the price you pay for privacy. The cottage being so isolated was good and bad, good in the way it provided so much privacy and bad in the way that sometimes we felt cut off from civilization. Another disadvantage with being so rural was when storms caused power outages, we were the last ones to be turned back on. There were many times when it was out for several days at a time, and this presented another problem. We were on a well requiring electricity to operate the pump, so no power also meant we didn't have any water. Obviously without water we couldn't flush a toilet or take a shower, and we needed gallons of bottled water to drink, cook and clean with. Other than the blatant inconveniences, the benefits of living so remote outweighed the disadvantages. Although we did have television, we didn't have cable as it simply wasn't available to the houses so far from town. We used an antenna, which proved very interesting during lightning storms as it served as an unwanted lightning rod. The moment you heard thunder you had to unplug the TV and disconnect the antenna line or lightning would blow out your set. It wasn't for a few years that a phone line was run up to the cottage due to lack of service to the hill. Remember, cell phones didn't exist back then, so if you needed to make a call, good luck. Thank God we didn't need emergency services back then, because by the time you got to a phone, good or bad, it'd be over. Better make sure there were hoses available for fire suppressant, because by the time the smoke signaled the fire department, it'd be too late. We heated the place with an airtight wood fireplace along with a kerosene heater, which worked out pretty well. It kept us very warm but also required lots of firewood and kerosene to get us through the winter. We'd have wood delivered by the truckload and wheelbarrow it from the field to the yard because the delivery driver couldn't get close enough to the house with his truck. Not only was lugging it a big job, but then it needed to be split and stacked. I remember spending weekends breaking my back splitting it with a large axe and a metal wedge just to keep up with demands. The flammable kerosene was another story and needed to be kept in one of the barns so if it went up, everything didn't burn down. One very cold, windy night at around 9 p.m. Susie headed down to the barn to refill the 2-gallon can with heating oil. She went to the back of the barn, behind the tractor, where it was stored. Hearing a sound like people whispering and mumbling, she freaked out. Dropping the can and running, she flew out of the barn and ran all the way back to the house. Out of breath and while running through the door she screamed, "Michael, there's something down there." Seeing her freaked, I asked, "Down where?" "In the barn," she said, "there's something there and I'm not going back there again." "What's in there?" I asked. "I don't know," she replied, "all I know is I heard really weird noises." Noticing her out of breath and how scared she was but still trying to figure it out, I asked, "What kind of noises did you hear?" "I don't know," she cried. Needing clarification, I asked again, "Think hard, what did they sound like?" I wondered what I'd be getting into going by down there and checking it out. "It sounded like people whispering and mumbling," she said. "Whispering and mumbling?" I asked, getting up. "Stay here, I'm going to check it out." "No, don't go down there," she said, "it's really weird, I tell you." Seeing her empty-handed, I asked, "Did you bring kerosene back?" "No, I just ran," she said. Heading to the door, I said, "Well then, it looks like I have to go back down there." "Don't, not now," she cried, "wait till morning." "No, it's cold tonight," I said, "I don't want to freeze and neither do you." Opening the door, I said, "I'm going down to get fuel for the heater, I'll be right back." "Michael, I'm worried," she cried, "please be careful and get right back, I'll be concerned the whole time you're gone." "Don't worry, I'll be fine," I said, walking out. Once down at the barn, I headed to the back of the tractor and began pumping kerosene into the can. That barn had no light, so by using a flashlight I could see the plastic container was about half full when I thought I heard something too. I stopped pumping for a brief moment and listened while the wind howled through the cracks of the building. After not hearing anything for a few seconds except for the wind, I resumed filling the container. Once reaching the top, I placed the pump back on the wall, put the cap onto the container, then turned the flashlight off. After placing the light in my pocket, then lifting the container, I heard another sound. It was a high-pitched voice and I heard it in the wind as it whispered and called out, "Mike, Mike." I froze in my spot, then yelled, "Who's there?" I waited a few seconds, then still only hearing wind, I headed toward the tractor's front. Reaching the exit, I heard the voice call out again, "Mike." I freaked and ran, carrying the full container all the way up the hill, back to the house. Once there, I ran inside, then locked the door. Susie, waiting inside and relieved by my return, cried, "Thank God you're here, I was getting so worried." Wondering if it was just her imagination, she asked, "So, did you see anything in there?" Placing the container on the floor, I replied, "No, but I sure heard something." "What?" she asked, "what did you hear?" I replied, I heard a very high-pitched voice and it kept whispering and calling my name, Mike. "That's really strange," she said, "I told you something was down there." "Yeah, you're right." I agreed, and what's weirder is whatever it was actually knew my name. Chapter 9 Contact. Not only did I build the cottage from the ground up but, also was a woodworker and cabinet maker for a shop in Healdsburg, California. I commuted approximately 32 miles from Petaluma to Healdsburg 4 days a week and worked 10-hour days. My days off were Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which usually meant more work for me around the cottage and yard. The drive to work took about 40 minutes one way and I had to be there by 6 a.m. I usually left my house around 5 a.m. therefore arriving at work about 20 minutes early, giving me enough time for a cup of coffee and a smoke before punching in. It was spring of 1983, a Friday night, and I was off work for the weekend. Weeknights I turned in early, somewhere between 7 o'clock and 8 p.m. as I had to get up so early for work and such a difficult thing to do without enough sleep. Because it was the weekend, I was up later this evening watching television with Susie and Angie. After watching a family program, which was available on our antenna, Susie put Angie to bed and tucked her in for the night. She returned to the living room and continued watching shows with me until around midnight, at which time we both decided to turn in. After checking on Angie one last time, we hit the sack, falling asleep rather quickly. Around 3:30 a.m. or thereabouts, I found myself being pulled out of a sound sleep by an extremely abnormal event. Being groggy and hearing some sort of sound, I opened my eyes and noticed very strange orange lights twirling around as they reflected off the upper walls of my room. They were rolling and flashing in a spinning pattern similar to the orange flashing turning warning/hazard lights from a tow truck light bar. Thinking I must be still asleep and dreaming, I laid there a minute until I realized I was actually awake. I began focusing on the sound that woke me in the first place, which was a high-pitched, whining repetitive noise. It sounded much like the harmonics or chants one would expect at some sort of religious ritual, and was emitting energy noises, like that which would be coming from a power generator in a power plant. The combination was extremely eerie and it had some sort of drawing effect on me, making me want to get out of bed. There was something particularly weird going on and I didn't have a clue what it was. Becoming frightened, and wanting a witness to the event, I turned over to wake my wife, but she was sound asleep. Giving a little nudge, I whispered, "Susie, get up, there's something really weird going on." She didn't budge and simply continued snoring, remaining sound asleep. Shaking her a bit harder this time and speaking up, I said, "Sue, get up." She still didn't let out a peep, move, or even roll over, as she was down for the count and there was absolutely no waking her. It was very creepy, almost as if she'd been drugged and under surgical anesthesia. Irrationally, the importance of her not waking was being overtaken by some unknown force pulling and drawing me away, causing me to hop out of bed. I didn't know if it was the lights, the sounds, or a combination of them both, but I was on my feet heading toward the living room. While passing Angie's room, I discovered the same bright lights flashing off her and the bedroom walls. I stepped in and, observing her sleeping, I tried wakening her, but, like her mom, she was down for the count. Pulling back her bedroom curtain in attempts of viewing the activities on the hill, my vision was blocked by the dense pines surrounding the cottage. All I could see was a bright orange light shining, glowing, and flashing through the branches, but couldn't make out its shape or size. Stepping back into the living room, I noticed the light flashing through the west windows, bouncing its reflection off the mirror tiles on the east walls. The room and entire house was completely filled with very bright orange flashing light mixed with an unusually strange noise, and I didn't have a clue what it was. One thing for certain, someone or something was taking control of me and my family, and at this point, I really had no other choice but to figure who or what it was. Glancing back into my bedroom, I noticed the cat still sleeping soundly at the head of the bed, and this was odd because he'd usually wake when I did. Whenever I got out of bed, he wanted to know if I was getting food, but this time he didn't and was out like a light, just like the others. Whatever was sedating them obviously was the same force luring and enticing me to investigate further. Turning, I headed straight for the west living room window, which looked out onto the hill. The curtains were very sheer, and this is how the light was able to penetrate them, flashing and glowing across my room walls and the living room mirror tiles. After pulling back the curtain, I realized it was useless, as this view was also blocked by the pines. The trees, which provided plenty of seclusion to the cottage, were becoming a significant problem because now I couldn't see what's happening on the hill. All I saw was a very bright orange light flashing and glowing through the branches, but couldn't make out what it was. Its intensity brighter than a lighthouse with orange filters and flashing like a tow truck light bar. It illuminated the cottage, the trees, and the surrounding area, and was absolutely blinding me. It was reminiscent of what Prophet Paul saw on the road to Damascus when blinded by the light of the Lord spoken of in the Bible. I was extremely confused as to why anything would even be out there in the middle of our field, and especially at that time of night. Remember, we were fenced in and at least 200 yards from the road, so anything being there would be extremely unlikely. Whatever it was completely perplexed and equally mystified me, drawing me toward it. The powerful chanting sounds kept pulling and drawing me closer and closer towards the door. Once at the door, I pulled back 2 slide bolts, untwisted the knob lock, then opened it. After standing there for a moment, examining the orange glowing field, I realized I needed to go out past the gate in order to see it. I walked off the porch, down the steps, through my yard, then opened the gate. Walking through and looking to my right, I discovered the source of what's been drawing me to it. I was facing my opponent, the thing that had been taking control of me and my family. I saw a gigantic, bright, orange ball of light in the shape of an enormous, round sphere, and it was hovering a few feet above the ground. It stretched to the top of the walnut tree, and staring at it brought back memories of the mountain. Realizing what I was looking at, I yelled, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, Ron, look, it's that orange thing from the mountain, it's here." I was standing right behind his window, and obviously he didn't hear me because when I turned around I froze. Becoming extremely fearful, I watched it hovering in midair while the outer edges of it began spinning like bright orange flames. The noises it made were swirling sounds mimicking that of a nuclear power generator, and it was mixed with repetitive chants. Almost instantly, out of the center of it, something began materializing. I watched as 3 very strange-looking beings appeared standing in front of it. They simply appeared right before me, instantaneously coming to life. It was almost as if they came from some sort of craft, or maybe even crossed through a hypergate. 2 of them were thin, short, standing approximately 4½ to 5 feet, appeared to have leathery gray skin, no hair, large head, large dark eyes, 2 arms, 2 hands, long fingers, 2 legs, 2 feet, 4 digits each hand and foot. They were dressed identical in one-piece flight jumpsuits, almost like spandex. Their clothing clung to their slight bodies like a second skin, and there were no visible seams. The material was extremely shiny, bright, and glistened like black satin, and the orange sphere behind them reflected off it. The third one in the middle looked a little different, as it was almost double in height, standing somewhere around 7 to 8 feet, and its clothing was baggier than the others, draping off its body and gathered at the waist. All 3 of them had large craniums and almost equally large black eyes, except for the tall one, which had slightly smaller eyes. I wanted to run, but they wouldn't let me. They were keeping me there with an extremely controlling godly force which was stopping me in my tracks. I tried turning right but couldn't. I was unable to move any part of my body, and these beings overshadowed me with total dominion. Out of my peripherals I saw the cottage front door and field gate still open, just waiting for my return, but I was helpless, unable to move. It was absolutely terrifying, very much like a nightmare, with everything in slow motion, and all I could do was watch. I felt my life coming to an end and truly believed I was going to die. I began fainting and blacking out. I felt my knees giving away from beneath. While falling, I suddenly felt my body stop short of the dirt just before unconsciousness. The next thing I remembered was the sensation of falling from a very high place at a very high rate of speed, then waking up in my bed, and it's around 8 a.m. I lost all perception of time as 3:30 a.m. turned instantly to 8 a.m. 4.5 hours were missing and I didn't know where they went, they simply vanished leaving me feeling like I was losing my mind. Was it all only a dream or was it reality? I was afraid to talk about it because people would treat me like I'm crazy. You know, as a matter of fact I felt I might be crazy myself. I hopped out of bed then headed to the kitchen where Susie had breakfast cooking. I plopped onto the couch next to Angie who was watching Saturday morning cartoons. Susie handed me a cup of coffee then said, "Here coffee, breakfast will be soon." As I reached to grab it she warned, "Careful, it's really hot." Taking the hot cup from her I said, "Oh, I will and thank you so much." While holding it in my hand and feeling its warmth I got a flashback of the orange sphere on the hill last night. Suddenly I hear her saying something but, really wasn't paying attention so she said, "You're very welcome." Apologizing I said, "Oh, I'm sorry honey, I didn't hear you cause I was thinking of something else." "Yeah, I can see that," she said. "Feel like sharing?" she asked. "No, it's not important," I said not wanting to get into it, "but, thank you so much for the coffee." "You're very welcome," she replied, "and you know I'm here." Obviously she could see I was deeply concerned about something but, knew I wasn't ready to talk I said, "I know, thank you sweetheart and when I need to, you'll be the first to know." "Okay then, I'll go to finish up breakfast," she said, "kick back and enjoy cartoons with Angie." Leaning back placing my feet on the coffee table I pulled my robe over my legs then while listening to cartoons my mind wandered again to last night. I couldn't shake the images of those beings and their orange sphere. At this point I was becoming extremely scared and seriously doubting my sanity. That morning, shortly after breakfast, I got dressed then went to pay my mom a visit. When I reached the parking lot I saw Dad on the 16-foot ladder doing something to the yard light so he asked, "Hey Mike, give me a hand and hold the ladder for me." Supporting the base of it with my feet then grabbing on with my hands, I looked up and asked, "What are you doing to it?" He replied, "Replacing the bulb and it's the oddest thing." Wondering what he's getting at I asked, "What's odd?" "Screwing the new one in," he replied, "that was a brand new bulb just a few days ago and it burned out already." Watching him climbing down the ladder I asked, "How long do they usually last?" "Here, look out Mike, I'm coming down," he said. I let go and stepped out of the way then as he stepped off the ladder he replied, "They usually last 6 months to a year and this one's about a week old. It must be defective." I said, "That's interesting." Nodding toward the house I asked, "Is Mom home?" "Yeah, she's in there," he replied, "Go on in and get a cup of coffee, I'll be in when I'm through in the yard." I headed through the door and Mom was reading the weekend edition of the Press Democrat newspaper. Seeing me she said, "Oh Mike, there's an article about a local sheriff's deputy who spotted a UFO in the shape of a cross hovering over the Sonoma Mountains last night. The deputy cited the object as large and stated that he saw it hover above the ground going from place to place then disappeared behind the mountains." Below is another article from guerneville.towns.pressdemocrat.com referencing the original sighting from the Press Democrat, finding the coincidence of this article being read to me now after last night's incident very peculiar. I glanced at the date then said, "Mom, this happened last night." "Yes I know," she said, "that's why I was showing it to you. I thought you'd like to read about it." Remembering me telling her about the 4-moon spike and I saw in the mountains some years back she continued, "You're always telling me about weird stuff you've seen so I knew this one would be right up your alley." Having mother's intuition and noticing how concerned I was she said, "You look worried about something, tell me what's wrong." Realizing my worry was blatantly obvious and not wanting to alarm her I simply replied, "Oh, nothing's wrong, I'm just tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night." "There's still coffee in the pot, do you want some?" she asked. I actually really was very tired and was having difficulties shaking it so I replied, No thanks mom, I've already had enough with breakfast. I'll be going all day if I drink any more. Being helpful she said, well, you really need to get more sleep you know. My mind was preoccupied, so not being able to concentrate on conversation I replied, I will. Hopping up from the table getting ready to go I said, Mom, excuse me but, I need to go take a nap right now so I'm leaving. All right, she said, go home and get some sleep, you need it. I really was exhausted and I didn't know why. I went to bed before midnight and slept in late. I should be fine but, I'm not. Wiped out I headed for the door then left. Walking through the parking lot Dad was picking things off the lawn getting ready to mow it. When he saw me leaving he asked, where are you going so soon? Walking by I replied, I'm just not feeling too good, I'm going home to rest. Are you coming down with something? He asked. I hope not. I said, I'll be fine, I just need some rest. After arriving home and telling Susie how exhausted I was I said, I think I'm going to lie down for a while and take a nap. What's wrong, not feeling good? She asked. Not knowing what to say and knowing the truth would sound outlandish and absurd I simply replied, oh I'm fine, it's just I didn't get much sleep last night, tossed and turned and you know how that goes. Wondering what all the tossing's about she asked, why couldn't you sleep, is something bothering you? Wanting to tell her but, still searching for the exact right way without scaring the heck out of her or seeming off my rocker all at the same time, I stalled and replied, no, nothing's bothering me, I'm just going to lay down for a bit and catch a few. Giving a hug and kiss then sending me off she said, well you just take a nap and I'll try keeping Angie quiet while I'm ironing. Wishing not to disturb my nap she asked, I won't be too loud if I do, will I? Heading through the bedroom door I replied, no you're fine, I'll sleep through it. Okay, sleep tight. She said. With thoughts of last night racing through my head I tossed and turned wondering if I was losing my mind. Was I dreaming or was I awake? How did I make it back to my bed from the field? I saw the front door and gate still open right before I passed out, how did it get closed? There were quite a few hours missing and unexplained or were they actually explained by a real phenomenon? If it was reality, who and what were those beings? What type of craft were they in or was it a real craft at all? If they were aliens from another world then where were the typical flying saucers? Could they be time travelers or dimensional beings from parallel worlds and the orange sphere actually is a hypergate from their world to ours? If they're from a parallel universe what's it like there? I'd like to talk to Susie about it but, what's the best way to bring it up? Is my wife going to think differently of me if I believe it's real? What will others think if I mention it? Would I be labeled a nut by our government if I contact them and how could they help me anyway? I doubt they could help themselves should it actually be aliens so talking to them is pretty much useless anyway. Needless to say, with all those things racing through my mind, I didn't get much sleep at all during my nap. After tossing and turning then finally surrendering to insomnia I got up and went to the kitchen for a snack. Susie, seeing me awake asked, did you get a good sleep? I opened the fridge then while browsing for food I decided it was now or never so I replied, no, not really, I tossed and turned the whole time. Being totally consumed and filled with concern she asked, what's wrong? There's something you're not telling me, all right out with it? Pleading with me she said, come on, you'll feel better. Finding nothing appetizing I closed the fridge then sat at the kitchen table and asked, have you ever felt like you're going crazy? Giving me her undivided attention she replied, every day. Obviously she thought I was talking about the usual kind of crazy people have every day and having no idea where I was going with it I explained, no, I don't mean the type of crazy where a person is nuts but, more like not being able to differentiate between reality and fantasy. What do you mean? She asked. She's my wife and I wanted her to understand so I said, What I'm talking about is seeing something that you're not sure if it's real because it's so absurd you know it can't be. It's something you've been taught can't be real and doesn't exist but, yet you saw it. You question yourself knowing you actually saw it but, aren't sure if it's real. That's the type of crazy I'm talking about. Alright, she asked, out with it, what did you see? Aliens, I said, I think I saw aliens. Oh, she asked, so where and when did you see aliens? Feeling very uncomfortable talking about it but, proceeding anyway I replied, last night in the field out by the gate. Becoming extremely serious, maybe not wanting to admit their existence she said, well, as you know I was raised Catholic and according to that religion there are no such things as aliens. It's just God, Jesus and the Holy Spirit so I won't take caution to the wind when thinking about aliens. What about angels? I asked. I was raised Roman Catholic and I know God's angels exist and they're mentioned all throughout the Bible. Have you ever thought that just maybe the aliens people see are actually angels and demons? Being uncomfortable she replied, I don't know, the whole idea of aliens gives me the chills. No but seriously, I said, just give it some thought. Who's to say the angels are little fat naked babies with wings and fly around like birds? Why couldn't they be the aliens people see? I'd rather not think about it, she said, those things scare me. Waving her hands in the air she asked, can we please change the subject? I don't know how I feel about angels being little green men from outer space. Actually, they're not green they're gray, I corrected. Well, whatever color they are makes no difference to me, they're still aliens and they scare me, she said. Just think about it, I said, please give what I'm saying serious thought. Okay, I will, she said turning up the television. With that the door popped open and Angie came in from the yard where she was playing. Realizing she must have been on the porch listening in on our conversation through the open window I whispered, shhhh. Quickly diverting the subject Susie asked, so, what were you doing in the yard princess? Just playing things, she replied while waving her little hands in the air. What kind of things were you playing? Asked Mom. Twirling her hair with one hand while sucking her thumb with the other she replied, I don't know, just like stuff. Becoming nervous with the inquisition and quickly altering the conversation she asked, what were you talking about Dad? Confirming her eavesdropping and knowing why she's inquiring I asked, I don't know, what were we talking about princess? Placing both hands on her hips Angie said, I heard you and Mom talking while I was on the porch about stuff, then she asked, what stuff were you talking about? Being blatantly honest I replied, why Angie, we were talking about aliens. No, she said twisting and giggling at the same time. Yes we were. I said making a funny face, and they're coming to get you. Look Angie, I'm one of them. Raising my hands in the air and walking very slowly towards her I said, I am Zodar from Mars and I'm going to get you, Gruel. Hoping I was actually playing she said, Dad, stop that now, you're just kidding around and you know it. Sensing her fear and patting her head reassuring her everything will be alright I said, yeah, I'm just kidding, why don't you sit down so Mom can get you some lunch then maybe. After we'll go visit your cousin. Getting excited while hopping in the chair she asked, my cousin Renee. Of course it's Renee. I said falling back onto the couch. She's the one you usually play with, isn't she? Swinging her feet, kicking them back and forth, she became so excited that she totally forgot what we're even talking about. Goody, she yelled, she's my best friend in the whole wide world. Watching Mother pulling stuff from the fridge she shouted, hurry Mom, I want lunch so we can go. I'm hurrying. I'm hurrying. I'm going real fast, see, said Susie placing food on the counter. After lunch, we went to my brother's for a visit and while I was there Ron asked, brother, why were you screaming, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god at 3:35 in the morning out in the field? Vaguely remembering doing that but, not wanting to admit it right then I replied, I wasn't in the field yelling last night, you must have been hearing things. No brother, I wasn't hearing things, he said, I heard what I heard and you were yelling oh my god. You pissed me off because you woke me up with it. Wondering if he saw anything I asked, did you see me doing this? Hell no, I'm not getting out of bed because my idiot brother is yelling at the wee hours of the morning. Shaking his head he said, I don't know what's gotten into you or why you're doing that but, please don't do it again. I couldn't believe he actually heard me out there and didn't look so I asked, why didn't you check up on me by looking out the window? He replied, I wasn't getting out of bed and ripping down the mover's pad over the window just so I could check on my idiot brother yelling in the field. Did you hear any sounds or see any lights? I asked. No, I went back to sleep, he said, don't wake me again. He obviously heard me but, couldn't see any lights because of the dense mover's quilt hanging in their bedroom window. I'm guessing he didn't hear any sounds either because by the time I woke him with my yelling I must have been gone. After visiting my brother we went back home and watched television with the kid. Very shortly she fell asleep on the couch then off to bed she went. I was overtired from the night before and was ready to turn in myself so we did. I was brought out of my sleep by the feeling of being pulled through the roof of my house then up into the sky at a very high rate of speed. It was weird and I could see my house disappearing behind me as I soared into the stars and it didn't make any sense at all. I was petrified and hadn't a clue what was going on. I kept telling myself, wake up it's only a dream, wake up it's only a dream and then I did. I'm wide awake lying on my back completely naked on some sort of invisible table. There were 3 alien beings surrounding me, 2 at my head and another at my feet. I was hovering a few feet off a clear floor which I could see my house below. The room was very strangely lit glowing with a very soft light and I was scared to death. I tried pulling myself up then finally I was about to sit up just a bit. The alien at my feet with his back at me turned quickly and realizing I was up, he lifted his hand, held it in the air which forced me back down in a laying position. He possessed powers so incredible that he was able to hold me down without even touching me. I couldn't move, talk or even budge and watched in terror as it grabbed a very long needle, probably about a foot which was connected to something resembling an odd syringe. I thought I was going to be killed because in a few very quick movements he thrust the needle into the center of my forehead. The anticipation petrified me and I knew it hurt but, it didn't, the needle went right in without any pain. Instantly I was communicating back and forth with them without even talking. The device in my head obviously was some sort of uplink allowing me to converse using telepathic means. My fear left and I asked, who are you? What do you want with me? Why am I here? I waited for a reply then one of them responded. Without talking it replied, who we are, what we want with you and why you're here is none of your concern for now. We have reasons for being very interested in you which you will find out later. Using my peripherals I noticed more beings off to my right which were different. They were very short and stubby, around 2 feet tall, had longer tubular bodies, very short legs, with arms a bit longer, gray skin, thinner dark eyes. They almost appeared as children except one of them was holding what looked to be a baby alien itself. What are they? I asked. They are us, replied one of the aliens, you may sit up now. Slowly sitting up but, feeling very groggy and fuzzy the alien in front points down and said, we are interested in them. Looking down through an invisible floor and viewing right through my brother's roof of his house I could see him and his wife sleeping in bed. I simply wondered what they wanted with Ron then instantly the alien communicated back, you need not be concerned and we know what we need. They were reading my every thought and found out all about my brother and family just by scanning my brain. Hovering over my mom and dad's house and seeing them in their bed they asked, who are they? I simply thought, that's mom, Dad and my little brother. Next I was hovering across the road over my other brother's house seeing him and his wife sleeping and they asked, "Who are they?" Thoughts of his family went through my head, then the next thing I knew I was hovering over my sister's house. I watched her and her husband as they slept in bed with thoughts of them running through my head. The alien asked, "There seems to be some sort of hierarchy here, will you explain?" Responding by thinking of the oldest then progressing down to the youngest, they knew the answer. I became freaked out thinking I'd never see my family again. I thought about my wife wondering why she wasn't there with me. They replied, "We're not interested in her." I thought about Angie and the rest of my family and actually began crying at the thought of never seeing them again. I was scared and wanted to go home so badly and really didn't want to be there. I kept thinking over and over, "I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here." The alien responded, "You're not ready yet, but you will be soon." Instantly I felt a falling sensation as I watched their faces disappearing. Then I was lying in my underwear in my bed. I felt like I just woke from a terrifying dream and my eyes were wide open with fright. It can't be real. I cried, waking Susie just enough for her to roll over and ask, "What's wrong, did you have a bad dream?" Realizing I was still next to her in bed, I rolled over, then putting my arm around her I replied, "Thank God, that's over and you're here with me." Moving closer and comforting me, she said, "I'm right here and not going anywhere, go back to sleep." Chapter 10 Manifestations. About 2 weeks passed and I was having difficulties dealing with my abductions and experiences. Looking toward family members for support was useless because they agreed with me and thought I was crazy too. My eldest brother completely disputed the concept of life being anywhere else except Earth, so he had absolutely no empathy or understanding regarding the matter. He told me if aliens or space travelers existed, then they'd have to rewrite the entire Holy Bible. When I mentioned the idea of them being angels, he literally laughed in my face and told me I was nuts. Have you ever felt isolated with your thoughts? It's almost like being on a deserted island with no one to help or even listen. Luckily my wife was fantastic and never made fun of me or treated me any different because of my experiences. Although at first hard to swallow, she slowly warmed up to the idea and never treated me with disrespect by laughing or scoffing when I'd speak of it. Dare I tell others though, or they'd probably suggest committing me to a booby hatch. Here's one: try telling your mom, dad, brother, or even best friend that you've been abducted by aliens who came in a glowing orange sphere, then watch their reactions. Well, my friends, most of them never talked to me again, probably because either they were too scared of the possible reality or simply thought I was insane and wanted nothing else to do with me ever again. Whatever the case, I can't say that I blamed them, because even being associated with someone who believes in aliens casts a lifetime full of ridicule. To them it was okay lying to kids about a phony Easter bunny or a fake Santa, but don't dare mention aliens. Personally, the idea of some strange fat man with a beard fitting down my chimney bringing presents to my kids is terrifying. Just think of it telling your son, "Tonight some bearded fat stranger is going to squeeze into our incredibly tight chimney, dragging a gigantic bag of toys that you know can never fit, and is going to leave a bunch of gifts for you. Remember, son, you're on his list of who's naughty or nice, and when he's done he'll be taking off from our roof in his magical flying sleigh and going all around the world in a single night, bringing presents to all the other kids, being guided by reindeer power." Telling harmless fables like this is why children sometimes grow up with twisted perspectives, and as adults they often can't see the real truth. I think I've just pointed out quite a few different criminal profiles in Santa alone. Just think of the implications here. As adults quite often they're unsure of whom or what the truth is, and sometimes turn into confused adults not knowing who or what to trust. By the way, I was told about Santa, the bunny, and all that, and then I taught my kids the same, so I do understand the fun in it all. What I'm getting at is scientifically approaching these holiday characters can be quite terrifying. By the way, I still look for that darn tooth fairy, but he never comes. Just kidding. It's absolutely amazing how cruel people can be, and even more astonishing how little they care about what's happening to you. Honestly, it was irrelevant what any of them thought. Because from my perspective, I believed that I had actually been abducted by aliens but, simply couldn't remember enough of it. It was amazing because I was actually building a protective barrier, closing off the hurting pain resulting from the negative statements of others. Because of my previous teachings, about aliens being imaginary, my mind was in constant conflict deciphering differences between the two. My nights were being interrupted by segments and flashbacks of the event. Night after night I was reliving it all, it was keeping me awake and causing me to lose sleep. Being truthful, part of the not sleeping was because of me feeling safer being awake, but that also had deprivation drawbacks too. The question repeatedly racing through my mind was, is it going to happen again tonight? The fear of anticipating another alien abduction made it easier staying awake. I started leaving a television on, as a distraction, hopefully keeping my mind from wandering long enough to fall asleep. Back then there were no sleep timers, so I'd wait until I fell asleep, then when I got up to use the restroom I'd turn it off. Not long after my contact, I was dozing off when I heard the television turn off all by itself. Sudden silence caused me to waken immediately, and noticing my wife still snoring, I knew she couldn't have turned it off. Wondering how it happened, I hopped out of bed, staggered to the set, then checked to see what's up. After feeling around in the dark, then finding the on/off knob, I noticed it was still in the out position and / on. Feeling around the back and checking the plug, I realized it must be broken. Being upset by not having my TV, I snapped, "Great. Now the television's broken." Waking her, Susie cried, "It's late, honey, forget about it for now and come to bed, there's always tomorrow." "I know," I said, hopping back under the covers, "it just makes me mad that it went out." Glancing toward the clock, trying to see the time and noticing it was out too, I said, "It must be a breaker, I'll go check." Hearing her snoring again, I said, "Never mind, just stay asleep, I'll get it." I hopped out of bed, headed to the breaker box located in the kitchen, then tried turning on the light, but it was out too. Feeling the breakers and noting them all in the up position, I realized that there must have been a power outage in the area. I went back to bed, tried forgetting about it, then shortly thereafter fell asleep. Suddenly I became restless and felt myself being pulled out of my bed, and was met with a familiar sensation of flying through my roof and shooting into the sky. I opened my eyes to a bright warm light shining through a foggy haze, making me no longer scared. Once again I was feeling confusion being brought about by not fully understanding where I am and what's going on. Still, none of it made any sense to me, and I was completely bewildered, without a clue. I saw 3 aliens appear through a dense foggy light, but, oddly enough, I was being filled by a sense of euphoria which was making me calm, relaxed, unafraid, and feeling good, like I'm in a comfortable place. I asked myself, am I seeing things or am I actually here? Suddenly my feelings quickly turned from placid, calm and relaxed to fearful, agitated and hostile. Somehow, someway I've re-entered a realm from which I can't wake, and I'm hostage to its powers. What's going on? Why am I here? I yelled, I'm hallucinating and seeing things, this can't be real. They spoke to me and replied, you're not seeing things and we're really here. Trying to shake it off as if it's a bad dream, I cried, this isn't happening, I'm only dreaming, I don't believe that you're real. One of them said, that's the problem with you, you don't believe. Many people from your planet don't believe in the truth. Wondering how we were communicating because that thing wasn't in my head, I asked, how are we talking to each other? He explained, the last time you were with us we stimulated your brain's communication center, so now you can convey your thoughts telepathically to us. You humans have a section which allows you to communicate this way, but haven't learned how to use it yet. You still rely on verbal communication in order to speak with one another. We don't need to hear you speak and communicate by simply thinking what we want to say. We hear anything you think and understand every thought you conceive. We understand all languages and communicate on many different levels. Pausing for a moment, then continuing, he said, you speak only one language and communicate on only one level. Unlike you, we speak all languages and communicate on all levels. We understand you at your level, but, right now in your human form, you would never understand us at our level and it would only confuse you. We will attempt making this easy as possible as we know of your human mental limitations. For this purpose we'll communicate in your language so you'll completely understand the meaning of our visit. We visited and talked with you many times, but, you only remember small segments of our visits, as this is how we want it. We allow you to remember the parts we want you to and erase memories we don't wish you to recall. We've been manifesting beliefs and thoughts into your being, but, now it's time you begin remembering our visits. At this time you don't understand why, and you won't until many of your Earth years pass. In our quest for a better relationship between you and the people of Earth, we need you to have memories of these visits. Still being afraid, I asked, why did you take me from my bed and what's the meaning of these visits? Feeling my fear, he replied, you can rest and don't be afraid, for this has to happen. If we truly wanted to hurt you or others, we'd simply do so. I know you don't trust or like us, but, please understand that we have no desire to hurt you or anyone. You've been returned to your bed many times, after our visits, unharmed and feeling no pain or discomfort. We love all beings and don't wish harm to any, but, only want to help. Wondering how they were helping, I said, well, I don't feel the same feelings about you, and I don't like being kidnapped out of my bed and being held hostage here wherever it is. That sort of behavior tends to contradict the love and not wanting to hurt concept. Where I come from, people who kidnap and hold others hostage, against their will, are considered the lowest life forms on the planet. We usually take people like that and lock them up in prison so they can't hurt anybody else. Please, forgive me if I'm having a difficult time seeing how you're helping me by kidnapping me and holding me hostage. We're not keeping you captive, he said, and we apologize for scaring you. You're free to go anytime and we will return you when you wish. Our hopes are that you'll be ready for what we have to say next time. Wondering what they're getting at, I asked, what do you mean by saying next time? How many more times will you take me? He explained, we will take you and others as many times needed for our message to be relayed. In the end, what we have to say is very vital to this planet's existence. There are many things you'll learn and some of them will be about your family. We understand you wish to leave, so we're sending you home for now. Instantly I felt as if I was falling from a high place back to my bed. I was wide awake next to Susie, confused by what just happened. What the hell? I cried, sitting up in bed. Honey, what's wrong? She asked, waking up from a sound sleep. You had a bad dream and it's over now, come on, relax, everything's going to be alright. Oh my God, I exclaimed, this stuff's getting unreal. I was dripping wet with sweat like I'd just gotten out of a shower, so I cried, man, it's so hot in here and it feels like 100 degrees, I'm opening the window. Boy, you are sweating, she said, feeling my wet hair, why don't you turn on the fan too so you can cool down? Yeah, good idea, I said, opening the window. Clicking the fan switches, turning it on, then facing it towards me, I exclaimed, oh man, that cool air feels so good. Sensing my tenseness, she said, babe, you need to try relaxing a bit, you're really tightly wounded and it's not good for you to be this way. She began rubbing my back, trying to calm me down, then said, sweetheart, I'm really worried about you. I don't like seeing you so upset with all this stuff bothering you. Wondering how she could help, she asked, is there anything I can do for you to help you through it? No, I'll be alright, I said, I don't want to trouble you with it, let's go back to sleep. Are you sure? She asked, really wanting to comfort me. I replied, yes, I'm sure, I'll be fine. Leaning over and giving her a kiss, I said, good night honey and thanks for caring. Anytime, she said, lying back down and closing her eyes. It didn't seem to take long, and in matter of seconds she was once again sound asleep and snoring. I lied awake, realizing what a problem I actually was having with falling asleep, and it was no wonder with what's going on. I was fearful about any more visits and my fears seemed to be confounded as they told me there'd be more. I tossed and turned for the next few hours without finding sleep. It wasn't until an hour or so before the alarm went off that I finally fell asleep. It seemed like I'd just closed my eyes, then it was time for work. After arriving at work I headed straight to the restroom, then did my business. While washing my hands I glanced in the mirror and noticed what seemed to be a very small round mark on my forehead. I leaned closer, getting a better look, when I noticed there was a small hole in the center of my forehead which was surrounded by a white patch. It looked just like a vaccination scar that wasn't there before. Rubbing it a bit with my finger I could feel it was flat, wasn't raised like a pimple, and didn't hurt either. I wondered where it came from because it just appeared. Needing to get through work I really didn't want to place much emphasis on it. I washed my hands, left the bathroom, got some coffee, then went outside to smoke a cigarette. Work was pretty much uneventful and the day went by as usual, then I raced straight home afterwards. All I really wanted to do was see my wife and little girl. Susie and Angie were really the only bright spots in my life. Simply seeing Angie playing, or hearing her as she told me about her day, was more gratifying than anything else. As I'm sure any parent would agree, there's something very special about your only daughter. Nothing in the entire world could compare to her except for maybe her mother. I walked through the field and as I approached my yard I saw her playing on her swing set. It was totally cool seeing her loving that thing so much because I built it from ground up and her appreciation for it was awesome. The only thing destroying the innocence of it all was where I constructed it, because just over the fence was where I was first abducted. Susie was sitting on the front porch waiting for me and drinking a soda, and seeing me she asked, "Hey babe, do you want one?" Reaching out and grabbing the icy cold soda I reply, "Man, you read my mind." Before I could even get the top of the bottle off, Angie came running up and gave me a big hug, then said, "Daddy, I'm playing on my swing set." Picking her up and holding her for a second I said, "I know, I saw you all the way down in the field when I was walking up, and boy, you sure looked like you're having fun." The sight of her playing was fantastic because she really was enjoying it. Man, what a great mental place to be, a little kid without a care in the world just playing on her swing set. It's at that very moment that I began thinking how helpless I was protecting her from aliens. She was my daughter, I knew she could be a target and there was nothing I could do about it. Trying to think happy thoughts I said, "Hey, maybe this weekend we could have a barbecue. Now doesn't that sound like fun?" Loving barbecues along with the family environment, she became excited and said, "Yum, then we could have steak, huh Dad?" Letting off a little laugh because I knew she didn't even like steak I replied, "Who are you trying to kid? You don't even like steak." "No," she said, "I don't like steak, but you can push me in my swing then." Knowing how much she loved that I asked, "Should I push you really high?" Gleaming from ear to ear she said, "Yeah, I want you to push me really high, high in the sky, that's fun." Squirming a bit she said, "Put me down, I have to go swing now." It was so cute the way she got excited about her swing set and loved the weekends when I was home. I put her down and she took off running straight for the swings. She was funny to watch because she really couldn't swing too well, but she thought she could, and that's all that mattered. "Hey babe, I've got an idea," said Susie, standing up and giving me a hug. "What's that?" I asked. Telling me, she replied, "I think we should take a drive to visit Pastor Grant." "Pastor Grant?" I asked, "Why do we need to go see him?" "I think he might be helpful with your problems," she said. "Look at me Daddy, I'm swinging really fast," yelled Angie as the swing was shifting back and forth furiously but not really going anywhere. "Wow, I see that, baby girl, you're doing great." While watching her I said, "I really don't know how he's going to help." I asked, "What is he, some sort of expert on UFOs and aliens?" Thinking I was being a smart ass and becoming a little annoyed she said, "Well, you don't have to act that way, I'm only trying to help." "I know you are and I'm sorry, I said, giving her a big hug. After letting out a sigh, I walked over to the gate leading to the field. Resting my arms on it and while examining the scene of my abduction, I said, "All right, Han, I guess it's worth a shot." She walked up, then standing next to me staring out at the same spot, she said, "Thank you so much, babe. Finish your soda while I call my dad so he can babysit." Seeing the mess of sawdust all over my work clothes, she said, "Change your clothes too, they're all messy from work." Chapter 11 Pastor's Ideas. We dropped off Angie, then in a matter of minutes we were parked in front of the church. I wasn't crazy about telling Pastor I'd been abducted by aliens, but told Susie I would, so there we were. It's not like I hadn't already tried discussing the matter with others, because I did. All they did was laugh and mock me, giving a bunch of garbage. Even though Grant was a nice guy, I simply felt very uncomfortable about telling a man of the cloth that I'd been visited by aliens from another world. Pastors understand quite a bit, but I wasn't sure how he'd take this one. Although he was a good guy, I kept in mind that he was a Baptist preacher and sometimes they don't understand things like this. Getting out of the car, then walking up to the church steps, I asked, "Are you sure he's going to be here?" Clearing my throat a little, I said, "I mean, we can always come back some other time." Grabbing my arm and pulling me along, Susie replied, "Oh, he's here, babe, I'm sure." "How do you know?" I asked. Dragging me along, she replied, "I've already called him, he knows we're coming and is expecting us." "Oh, I see," I said. You know, I sort of figured she'd already called ahead, but it didn't hurt to try. We headed left towards the back of the church, then through an open door where Grant's office was. I was extremely nervous about explaining it, but knew that's why I was there. You see, my viewpoint on it was, telling others about it didn't bother me, because if they became jerks and laughed, it was easier telling them where to go. Grant, on the other hand, well, he worked for God, and the thought of me telling him where to stick it just didn't feel right. I know God wouldn't like me telling off one of his servants, and equally sure Susie would be mad. Hearing us knocking, he glanced up from his desk and in a surprised tone said, "Susie, Mike, oh please come on in, it's such a pleasure having you two here." "Mike, you came along too, what an honor it is to have you. Please have a seat, make yourself comfortable." Helping us with the chairs, he asked, "Would either of you like a cup of coffee or a soda?" In attempts of getting this over quickly, I politely replied, "No thank you," then took a seat. Sitting down, he looked at Susie, then asked, "How about you?" Being polite, she replied, "Oh, no thank you, Grant." Leaning back, he said, "If you don't mind, I'll just get right down to business then. So Mike," Susie filled me in a bit about what's going on now, "why don't you tell me in your words what's happening?" Not knowing where to start, I simply asked, aliens and UFOs, what do you think of them? Do you think they're real? Do you think they exist? There was a moment of silence, then he replied, "Angels and chariots of fire, oh they're very real, Mike. The Bible speaks of chariots of fire gone asunder in the sky. Remember Elijah when he went up in a whirlwind and was taken away in one of them? We mustn't forget about Ezekiel either, and the strange wheel within a wheel he saw flying around. The one I personally love are the two messengers from the Lord God who spoke with Lot in the story, Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember, they came as two men. This stuff's all over in the Bible, and I think you'd get a lot out of it." "Why do you ask?" "Well, I've seen them," I replied. Puzzled with my answer, he asked, "Seen what?" "Aliens," I replied. "I've seen them and been inside their craft." After pondering my reply, he said, "Well, I've read stories about people who've claimed to have been abducted but usually have some sort of marks on their bodies, you know, some type of evidence supporting the validity of their statements. Do you have any marks anywhere on your body, maybe left by visitors?" "Yes, I do," I said, pointing to the small hole directly in the middle of my forehead. "See, it's right there, it's an actual hole that I can put a toothpick into." It just appeared after one of my visits and hasn't gone away. Examining my forehead said, "Wow, you really do have a mark there." Leaning forward getting even a better view he said, I wonder what it is you have there." Not wanting to sound odd but, "Would you mind if I ran my finger over it?" "Sure, go ahead," I said leaning forward allowing him to touch it. Running his finger over it he said, "It's very smooth and flat and discolored." Examining the center he said, "You're right, there is a hole in the center," then asked, "So you say you can put a toothpick in it?" Leaning back I replied, "Yes I can, and it goes right in." With his eyes fixed on it he said, Maybe it's the mark of God placed upon the foreheads of the servants. Here, let me show you in the Bible." Opening it and heading straight for the back he said, "Here, Revelation 7, the 144,000 sealed." Revelation 7:3 reads, "Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God." "Here, let me show you more," he said thumbing through the pages. Right here in Revelation chapter 9 verse 4 it says, "They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads." Flipping the page he said, "Look, here it is again in Rev 9:3-4. And out of the smoke locusts came down upon the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth of any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads." Closing the book he said, "So you see, this stuff is all very real. Mike, I think you've been blessed and I believe that you might have the calling." Wondering what he's getting at I asked, "You know Grant, I've heard the term the calling, but how does someone know if they have it?" "Usually they have a visitor," he replied, "either a visitor or some sort of manifestation begins happening to them. After this experience they change in some way, hopefully for the good but, sometimes for the bad. You've got to watch out for those bad ones." After thinking a moment he asked, "Mike, how do you feel about it? Do you think they were good or could they be bad? Did they do bad things to you then leave you stranded somewhere, or were they kind? How did they arrive?" "Well Grant," I replied, "they didn't come in a flying saucer if that's what you're asking, no, but in a big flying, glowing sphere. One time I saw it light up our whole field and all through our house, nobody waked except for me. It was the strangest thing too." Light's good," replied Grant. "The Lord often presents himself to his servants in the form of light. Remember Moses, when he saw God, the Lord presented himself as a burning bush. I'd like to add Saul on the road to Damascus, the Lord also revealed himself as light and he was blinded by it. I'll ask again, did they seem nice?" I replied, "I guess so, they didn't leave me stranded anywhere and I wound up back in my bed." Giving it a bit of thought I said, "The needle that they put in my head was big but, I didn't feel it, so I guess the answer is, no, they didn't hurt me. One thing I'll tell you for sure is they had some awesome godly powers that I'd never seen before and actually held me down without touching me." He asked, "Were they holding you while making that mark?" "It had to have been," I replied, "it's the only time I remember them holding me down." "Do you have any messages from them?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied, "it's like something important was happening but, I'm just not sure what it was." That's okay," he said, "sometimes these messages manifest in a person over a period of time coming out later in life, and that's why we say it's the calling." "So, what you're saying is the Lord's calling me to be a servant?" I asked. He replied, "Yes Mike, that's exactly what I think." Turning toward my wife he said, "Susie, I believe you're married to a very blessed man." She replied, "Well, I've always felt there was something very special about him." "Mike, Susie," he said, "believe me when I say he's been blessed, and this is a very fortunate event. It's so exciting too because not many people get this experience and actually it's quite rare. According to scripture it's 144,000 who actually receive that special seal. It was amazing because he actually sounded as if he were pleased by my entire abduction experience, almost as if he wished it was him that it happened to. It was getting late, so I said, "Come on babe, we really need to get going." Not wanting us to leave, he asked, "Going so soon?" Not wanting to sound rude, I said, "I'm sorry pastor, but I really need to get going so we can get done because I'm beat and have to get up early for work tomorrow." Taking my cue, Susie stood up then said, "Thank you so much for your time, Grant, and everything you said is very interesting indeed." "Well, likewise," he said, "I've enjoyed my visit with you too." Chapter 12 Wohler Bridge. I went to work that week, and when the weekend rolled around, one of the guys from another department asked if my wife and I would like to join them on a camp out. They were planning a trip to Wohler Bridge at Russian River and were going to stay until Sunday. We'd be camping out, under the trees, having a campfire, swimming and pretty much all the other fun stuff that goes along with it. Realizing I probably needed a break and knowing how much Susie loved the outdoors, I decided we'd tag along. I thought maybe it's just what we needed, to get away and escape things at home. After arriving home I asked, "Hey Susie, do you want to get away this weekend?" "Get away to where?" she asked. I explained, "Well, some of the guys from work and their families are headed to Wohler Bridge for a camp out and asked if we wanted to join them." "I'd love to, but what about Angie?" she asked. "I have no one to watch her." "We can bring her too," I replied, "they're all bringing their kids." "Well, you know how much I love the outdoors," she said, "and it does sound like a great getaway. So, does this mean you want to go?" I asked. "Yeah, it sounds like fun," she said. "So when are we leaving?" "As soon as we get our things together," I said. "We'll hit the store on the way up and pick up some stuff for the trip." "All right, I'll get our stuff together while you shower," she said, heading to the bedroom to pack. It didn't take long, and before we knew it the trunk was filled with sleeping bags, towels, clothes and all the other things needed for a camp out. We didn't really bring too much and figured packing light was easier. We planned on keeping all the stuff in the trunk and taking it out as needed, this way there'd be no pack up in the end. We arrived somewhere around 9 p.m. and when we got there they already had a fire going. Joining the group around the fire we chowed down a few deli sandwiches, then kicked back. The kids were toasting marshmallows over the flames while moms were helping them with the graham crackers and chocolate. While helping Angie with the hot s'more, Susie said, "Hey babe, coming here was a really good idea." Watching her eat the melted marshmallow and chocolate I replied, "Yeah, she sure seems to like it, look at her scarf down that candy." Thinking it kind of cute I said, "Well Angie, it looks like you prefer that s'more over the sandwich you didn't eat." With chocolate all over her face she smiled from ear to ear, then said, "That's 'cause these are yummy, Dad." Having to agree I said, "Yeah, you're right kiddo, why don't you make me one too?" "You have to say please," she said. "All right," I said, "please make Daddy a s'more." I could have done it myself, but it was just too much fun watching her burn the marshmallow to a cinder. After candy snacks the kids all climbed into their sleeping bags, then turned in for the night. Us adults remained awake and sat around the fire for quite a bit longer talking. It was very nice, enjoying the fire, relaxing in the outdoors and forgetting about my worries for a while. Everyone started turning in for the night, leaving Susie and I the last ones awake. With the fire slowly dwindling out, Susie asked, "Are you ready to turn in?" Suddenly a very uneasy feeling fell about me, making me rise to my feet. Everyone else was sound asleep while I stood there for a moment scanning the area. Realizing something was bothering me, Susie asked, "What's wrong, babe?" "Quiet," I said. "Don't you hear it?" I asked. "Hear what?" she asked. "You don't hear that high-pitched sound?" I asked, still examining the entire area. Rising to her feet she replied, "Now that you mention it I do hear something, but I don't know what it is. Remembering back to when I was a kid and coming out of my darkroom when I heard the same sound which chased me all the way to the house, I said, "Let's go, we're going home." "But we just got here, why do you want to leave so soon?" she asked. "I can't explain right now," I replied. "Quick, grab Angie and I'll get our sleeping bags, we're leaving." With the noise getting louder and closer, she became concerned and asked, "What's that noise?" Not having time to explain, I picked up the bags then ordered, "Just grab the kid and let's go now." Bending down and while picking her up sleeping bag and all, she cried, "That noise is getting closer and seems to be all around us, it's weird, what is it?" "Move," I ordered, "quick, get to the car." She took off running, heading straight for the trail with me to the rear and the sound following us. It was pitch black and flashbacks of the darkroom kept racing my mind while running through the dark up the trail. "Michael, I'm scared," cried Susie, "someone's following us." Clutching the bags with my left hand and while pulling the car keys from my pocket with the other, I continued running and shouted, "Just keep going, move, move, move." I knew what was chasing us but wasn't letting her in on it as she'd only panic. Glancing to my side, I spotted two faces with sets of big black eyes staring out at us from the bushes. I noticed a purple hazy light in the general aerial, but we didn't stop and kept running, heading for the car. Reaching the parking lot with the noise still surrounding us, Susie cried, "Michael, what's following us?" Quickly unlocking her door then throwing the bags into the rear seat, I yelled, "Hurry, unlock my door." She was busy messing around with something in the back, so she didn't have a chance to unlock my side. Using the key, I opened it then jumped in at the same time as Susie. I started the car then turned around to back up and noticed the empty car seat. Thinking Angie must have been in Susie's lap, but not seeing her there either, I cried, "Where's Angie?" "She's in her car seat," cried Susie. "Hurry, let's go." I turned back around and suddenly she appeared sitting in her restraints, so I said, "She wasn't there a second ago." "Michael, just drive," she yelled, "I want to get out of here now." While driving out of the parking lot, Susie remarked, "This is weird, the sky is like dusk but it's 1 in the morning." We couldn't see anything as we headed down Wohler Road but still heard the high-pitched sound, so she cried, "That noise is still following us." Reaching River Road and still hearing the same thing, I said, "Yeah, I know." Glancing in the rearview mirror and spotting Angie sleeping in her seat, I instructed, "Keep an eye on her while I get us out of here." Susie turned slightly and out of peripherals watched her as I floored the car down the desolate country road toward the highway. We drove for a few miles when she cried again, "I'm really frightened, that noise is still following us but I don't see anything. I'm serious." "Now, what is it, Michael?" Still being afraid of her panicking, I refused to answer and replied, "I don't know, and you're right, it's still following us." I was driving an Oldsmobile Delta 88 which had the 455 rocket motor which I had floored, and they were keeping up no problem. When we reached the small town of Fulton, I flew through the intersection and headed straight for the freeway. They followed us all the way until we finally hopped on US Highway 101 heading south, then the sound went away. Turning back around, now facing forward, she asked, "That noise, it's gone, where'd it go?" Soaring down the freeway heading into Santa Rosa, I replied, "I don't know." Glancing into the mirror and spotting Angie still sleeping, I said, "Thank God she's all right." Chapter 13. The Triangle Ship. A little while went by with thankfully not too much excitement going on, and I was enjoying the normal back and forth to work, getting into the normal mundane routine. Remember, because I had to be at work in Healdsburg by 6 a.m. it meant getting up at 3:30. I probably could have got a little more sleep if I didn't want breakfast or need time to get ready. The drive from Petaluma to Healdsburg always took about 40 minutes, never any more or any less, and this was because nobody else was out on the road, heading north, at that time of morning. One thing about me is I'm always very punctual, as I'm either right on time or arrive fashionably early. I always try to give myself enough time in case something out of the Ordinary happens or have an emergency. I wore a wristwatch on my left arm and it was synced to the microwave and bedroom clock and they were all within a few seconds of one another. I walked out the door at 5 a.m., stepped off the porch and into the yard, then headed toward the gate leading to the field, the same field I'd been abducted from before. The trip to the parking lot required a short hike, in the dark as there were no street lights on the way to my car. The only light available was located in the parking lot itself. It was really a creepy feeling, but I got used to doing it as I had to every morning on my way to work. I got to the car, unlocked the door, then after opening it and placing the key in the ignition I stepped back and looked straight up. There in the sky was an enormous black craft in the shape of a triangle just hovering, very low to the ground, about 200 to 300 feet above me. It was simply immense and its wingspan seemed to stretch almost as wide as our 7-acre parcel. After hovering, it began moving forward very slowly at first and silently, then increasing its speed a bit it moved a little faster. It remained absolutely quiet and didn't make a sound as it moved through the sky above. I saw an orange light along its underside and I watched it slowly ascend as it flew over the top of our hill, then out of sight. At first I thought I was seeing things, but then I just figured it was some sort of new test plane of our government. It made sense because our farm was just a crow's flight over the hill from the Coast Guard base and by car was only approximately 7 miles away. It took all of about maybe 45 seconds for it to fly off sight. I brushed off the incident and didn't think too much about it because after all, at least they left me alone this time. I hopped into the car, started the engine and warmed it up for about 2 minutes while picking out a cassette tape. After turning on the stereo and pushing in the cassette, I placed the car in drive, then headed off to work. I drove the back roads heading my way toward the freeway, then up to work listening to my tunes as usual. I arrived at my normal time but didn't see anybody sitting in their cars chatting like they typically did. I glanced at my watch and I still had my usual 20 minutes hangout time. I headed in to pour a cup of coffee so I could relax before starting work. I was at the coffee maker looking around when I noticed everybody already working. I thought maybe some of them came in early as they did often for extra hours. Once again I glanced at my watch, verifying I still had over 15 minutes before punching in. I proceeded to fill my cup, then headed outside for a smoke. I was approaching the door heading to the parking lot when my boss Alex spotted me. I guess he wondered what was up because he asked, "Where are you going, Mike?" Shaking his head while pointing to his watch he said, "You're late and you need to get to work." Once again examining my watch I replied, "Alex, I still have 15 minutes until I'm on the clock, I'm having my coffee and smoke." Looking at me and laughing he said, "Mike, you idiot, you're almost 20 minutes late, get to work now." Knowing I wasn't late I said, "Alex, stop messing with me, I can't be late because my watch is synced with 2 other clocks." Stretching out my arm displaying my watch I said, "Here, check it out for yourself." He said, "Nice try, but your watch is wrong, check out the time clock." Glancing around the corner I became confused when seeing it because it read 6:20 a.m. It's impossible for me to be late, I'm never late for work, I said, standing there with my coffee. Not having any explanation I apologized and said, "I'm really sorry, Alex. I don't know how this happened, but my watch must be broken. I swear, I woke up at the same time and left my house at the same time, I'm early every day and you know it." "It's cool," he said, "it happens to all of us, right, Mike?" Realizing I'd given him a bad time for the same thing so many times before I said, "Alex, you've made a very valid point and I guess I've done the same to you when you've been late, please forgive me." Reassuring me things were okay he patted me on the shoulder and said, "It's okay, we're still friends, just get to work now." Putting the smoke back in the pack and bringing my coffee with me I said, I'm going." Wondering how I could have been late and with thought of the black triangle craft coming to mind, I realized I must have been delayed. The entire incident really embarrassed me because I looked like a real idiot, first arriving to work late, then having the nerve to get a cup of coffee while everyone else is working. Once back home, I checked the microwave and bedroom clock, and they were both 20 minutes faster than my watch. The sudden extreme loss of time was absolutely perplexing because I checked my watch against them right before leaving in the morning and they were all synced. The watch didn't lose any more time during the day either, only in the morning while on the way to work. That big black triangle craft had something to do with this. And I knew it, as 20 minutes doesn't just disappear. That night I set my watch again just to see if something was wrong with it, and it never did lose another minute. You know, after this I never did trust wristwatches and never wore them again. From that day forward, whenever going to work, I always left a half hour earlier just so I wouldn't be late again. I also made it a point that every day, as soon as I arrived to work, I checked the time clock before getting coffee. Chapter 14 Terror Drive. Once again, I was on my way to work in Healdsburg, and after the last experience I'm now departing a half hour earlier so not to be late, and of course this meant I wasn't in any rush. Susie recommended that I don't leave so early and told me if it were her she'd want the extra sleep. Me on the other hand, it's not that I didn't want the extra sleep, it's just that I didn't want to be embarrassed by arriving late again because of strange happenings. In reality, it was becoming sad that this stuff was taking up so much of my life that I actually had to work around it. I was heading north on the 101 freeway listening to the band Toto on cassette tape. After passing the last Santa Rosa exit I entered the Forgotten Land, a part of the freeway without streetlights, cars, or people. Back then this stretch of road was very secluded, and if you broke down there it'd be a long walk for help. I was a few miles from my exit when I glanced to the right and saw what appeared to be a very bright halogen headlight coming out of the dark field. Not sure what it was. I thought it might be a motorcycle or somebody four-wheeling in the field, except it was moving way too fast. It was very low to the ground and moving like a jet as it headed my direction towards the freeway. It pulled in a little ways behind me and I watched in my rearview mirror as it soared up closer. I began freaking because in a matter of seconds it was right on my ass, tailgating, just a few feet to the rear. I seriously thought it was going to hit me, so I screamed out the window, "Get off my butt, you idiot!" I was about 2 miles from my exit and it was getting closer, almost on my bumper end. I was scared that it was going to run me off the road. I really didn't have a clue as to who or what it was or what they wanted, so I stepped on the gas trying to get away. It was no use, as the faster I went the faster it went, keeping up with me, staying right on my tail. In my mirror the vehicle resembled a truck and its lights were so bright they're actually blinding me from behind, making it difficult seeing where I was going. Then it happened. Suddenly my car lifted off the road, then began moving to the right all on its own. I tried steering left but I couldn't, so I was totally freaking out, thinking the car's going to flip over at the side of the road. With this thing right on my tail, my vehicle began slowing down as it was obviously being controlled by something other than me. The stereo, which was still playing the song, "You Know I Won't Hold You Back Down," by Toto, instantly stopped. Then everything went dead. The engine died, the lights went out, the cassette turned off, and it was almost as if I'd been hit with an EMP, zapping and killing all electrical devices. The vehicle came to a complete stop, yet still hovering a few feet above the road. It began slowly moving to the right, through the air, and didn't stop until it was out in the field. The bright lights were still to the rear and still blinding me, making it so I couldn't see much. The vehicle stopped moving and it felt as though I hit something as it was dropped to the ground. I thought, oh great, now my car's all messed up and there's going to be an expensive repair bill. The car was at a dead stop when suddenly I felt it violently jerking back and forth. I heard the sound of what seemed to be a diesel engine coming from behind. I know it seems odd, but that's exactly what it sounded like. Squinting while examining the light in my driver's side mirror, I became angered at whoever or whatever screwing with me and my car. With the window still open I yelled, "Hey you idiot, now you've done it, you've wrecked my car." When I heard no reply, my anger quickly turned to fear and I became scared to death. I was absolutely afraid to even step out of the vehicle because I seriously didn't know what was going on. Glancing in the mirror again, I spotted 4 silhouettes from beings as they approached my vehicle. They didn't look much like people at all, and their shadowed appearances nearing the driver door terrified me to death. Very quickly I rolled up my window and locked the door. I tried placing the car in park and starting my engine, but it was no use as the shift lever wouldn't move and everything was still deader than doornails. It's right about then that I began realizing what was going on and said, "Oh great, here we go again." Quickly jumping over the bench seat into the back, I turned myself into a ball and tried hiding on the floor. I don't know why I did this because whoever it was knew I was in the car anyway. I believe I didn't know what to do, and at the time it seemed like the only available option. A feeling of exhaustion fell about me, and from the rear floorboard I look up through the rear passenger window, and that's when I saw who was chasing me and ran me off the road. There were 3 alien faces staring at me through the glass, and the car was filled by a bright white light. Almost instantly, I was lifted into the air and floating inside the car as I began going out. The last thing I remember was slipping into a state of complete unconsciousness. Being groggy when I came to, I was on the floor of a very brightly lit white room. I seemed to be waking up and now aware of everything happening. I was completely naked, and whatever happened to my clothes was a mystery. It felt like the room was some sort of waiting or holding room by the way it was set up. There was a white bench seat in front of me that ran the entire length of the wall. Picking myself from the floor and further examining the room, I noticed there were no doors or windows, just bright white walls, ceiling, and floor. The entire area was completely exempt of all furnishings other than the lone bench along the wall. Although the room was brightly lit, there weren't any visible signs of fixtures or light sources and was simply filled with light coming from an unknown source. I couldn't figure out where it was actually coming from, and quite frankly it was the oddest thing. I wanted out, but, obviously with no doors or windows, there was no way out. Slowly turning, I headed straight for the bench because I was so tired I wanted to sit. I felt to be under some sort of tranquilizer, making me no longer care where I was, and became curious. For the very first time I was becoming very relaxed, so I closed my eyes and rested in their silence. While in a very relaxed state, I suddenly felt a strange presence, so I opened my eyes. I didn't say a word and I just stared in amazement. I was examining 3 alien beings who were also examining me. The alien in the middle was different the other 2 and was definitely more humanoid, as its skin was fleshy like ours. It was extremely tall, probably somewhere around 7 to 8 feet, and towered over the shorter greys. The greys were different and almost appeared to have flesh like dolphins. They all had slender bodies, 2 arms, 2 hands, 4 fingers each hand, 2 legs, 2 feet, 4 toes each foot. Suddenly I knew how to communicate with them, so I asked, "What's going on? Why am I here?" They collectively replied, "Please try relaxing and let us explain, as we've waited a very long time to have this talk with you. We've visited you many times, but you weren't ready for our subject matter, but now the time has come and you're ready for these communications." "I don't understand," I said. They replied, "We know you don't understand and want to help you so you can understand the meaning behind all our visits. Do you remember during one of our visits being introduced to a young baby?" Vaguely remembering seeing one of them holding a baby, I replied, "Yes, actually I do. He was your great half-uncle," they said, "and he was never given a chance to be born, as he was killed before birth at his father's hand, just as you were almost killed by your father." Realizing I never told anyone about this, I asked, "How did you know that happened to me?" "We've been there with you," they replied. "We were there every time, keeping you from death, as we don't wish history to repeat itself." "Oh my God," I asked, "are you serious? The light you saw through the cracks of the barn walls while you were lying on the stable floor right before your dad almost killed you, that was us protecting and guarding you from harm?" They replied. "So," I asked, "what do me and my great half-uncle have to do with each other?" They explained, his grandfather was a great ruler among your people and was known as Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria and King of Hungary. Remembering being told by my grandmother that I came from royalty and my dad shouldn't be touching me because of it, I became shocked and said, "No kidding, she did tell me something like that." They said, "Grandparents of the unborn child, Franz Joseph, and wife Elizabeth have great sorrows for not allowing the marriage between your grandmother Anna and Rudolf, son of Franz Joseph and Elizabeth. It's because they forced the marriage between Crown Prince Rudolf and Stephanie that their son didn't find the love he sought. He had an affair with a woman who became pregnant, so he murdered her, the unborn child, then turned the gun on himself, committing suicide. These faithful grandparents never had an opportunity to know their grandchild nor their other grandchildren like you. You are one of the great-grandsons of Franz Joseph and his wife, and this is why you were chosen for these visits." "So, were those my grandparents visiting me with the baby?" I asked. "Yes," they replied, "along with not allowing marriage out of love, but also for all the killing they've done while rising to power, are reasons for our visits. They know the error of their ways and have witnessed all the destruction it's caused all over your world. It's their wish that you help teach others how to act kind, loving, and understanding to one another instead of killing each other in useless, senseless wars. Our Creator has personally chosen and allowed you to see and hear these very important messages because, as we told you when you were young, we are your parents who've gone on before you. You asked who we are, and we tell you we are your past, present and future, and come from your beginning, middle and end. Our world is near and far, but are here with you now, giving you this message." Remembering what my brother said about them being God, I asked, "Are you God?" They replied, "Our Creator is God and we are the angels you Bible speaks of. Many people of your world call us aliens, but we're not too much different than you, except we've evolved further. We operate at a higher level and visit with many people from your world. The demons will also visit people of your world, and you must know the difference. You can tell the difference by their deeds. Judge them by their ways, because if they're ungodly demons, they won't lead you to God but rather to themselves. We want you to know that your Jesus Christ of earth is our King and still exists here with us." Suddenly the white floor turned into a color monitor screen and I was viewing a video of the Earth's oceans, rainforests, then the cities of our world. The picture changed to an image of Petaluma, California. I looked down at the floor and we were hovering above my house as I said, "Hey, that's where I live." "Yes, we know, that's why we're showing it to you," they said, "keep watching." The room lifted and we were now hovering above the Sonoma Mountains with the town in ruins. It was overpopulated and most of the homes were completely destroyed, so I asked, "What happened?" The picture changed to an image of flying saucers like you'd see in a television show, and they were destroying the community. "Those are the ones you call demons, and they will do this to your world while you'll be helpless to stop them. Our government won't let this happen to the world," I said, "they'll destroy them." "Your government is weak and won't be able to," they said, "the demons are very strong and will gain a mighty foothold over you." "So what, are we doomed?" I asked. "I thought the angels were supposed to help us. If you're angels, then where are you?" The image changed to video of orange and white spheres destroying the flying saucers and other odd-shaped ships. Then they explained, "We are the ones protecting and saving you from this in the orange and white orbs. But this is a war at some stage we have to go through." I asked. "Yes," they said, "soon your planet will be the stage of a horrible battleground and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Your people are going to slaughtered and die off to a point there won't be many survivors. The only survivors will be the ones God's chosen himself." Watching through the floor, ships were fighting everywhere, and while sitting naked I asked, "By the way, what happened to my clothes and where are yours?" They explained, "In our world we don't need clothes and only put them on when entering one which requires them." Still watching this screen and seeing my world being blown up, I asked, "So why are you showing me this stuff and what am I supposed to do about it?" "You come from long line of strong leaders," they said, "and we want you and others like you, to help guide as many possible in the direction of good. This isn't a battle ending. upon your death but, one occurring far afterwards too. Your distant earthly guardians help set up a path towards God and we wish you to follow in their footsteps. He who is with us never perishes but, lives on forever as we're living proof. Keep in mind 1/3 of the visitors are evil demons and will terrorize others. Judge them by their deeds, are they godly or not? Don't be easily fooled as many will come disguised as us, angels of light only to betray those who'll believe their lies. These are beings from other worlds, dimensions, and realms and can pose as anything your mind conceives. Matt 7:15-20, 2 Corinthians 11:14. They will have great powers as we do but, theirs comes from evil, Mark 13:21-23. Our power, which comes from good, will always prevail. Your world thinks of us as many things such as aliens, Martians, little green men, space travelers, planetary beings, dimensional/time travelers and so on but, we are you and you are us and we are only one level above you. Please understand that when you pass on and leave your current body you will be transformed into us, Philippians 3:20-21, 2 Corinthians 5:1-5. We are angels which operate under the full authority of God and can go anywhere. There are no barriers, locked doors, dimensions, or universes that we can't go to as we carry authorization from God and work directly under Jesus Christ. Please understand, other beings from other worlds do support our goals and promote God and Jesus Christ and are part of our network. There are also beings that don't support good which even resemble us that are actually our enemies simply because we do God's bidding. Many of them came from the original rebellion banishing them from our realm and are often referred to by your world as, demons and fallen angels. Why don't you simply talk to our president who runs our country? I asked, it seems he'd be more effective at getting news out there than me. They replied, you ask many questions and believe us when we tell you that your officials have already bartered deals with other beings not of the light. Your world wishes knowledge which pertains to control and destruction, this isn't good. They wish to use that knowledge as leverage while taking each other over and these are not pure intentions. Your world is curious and has many questions about matters they don't understand. They aren't ready for all the answers as the truth will only scare them. It's time for them to know certain things so this is what we share with you. As time approaches many things will be revealed but, the fruit is not ripe enough, when it reaches maturity it will be harvested. So, what do you want me to do? I asked, everyone's going to treat me like I'm crazy if I even talk about it. I'm nobody down there on earth you know. Who's going to listen to or believe me? They replied, you'll have to figure that one out on your own. Just remember, this battle is ultimately between the forces of good and evil and we represent good and God. Jesus Christ is our King and his Father God sacrificed him once for your people to find true salvation. Those refusing refuge with the Lord will have been warned and are responsible for what happens to them. Suddenly the image changed to one of me and my brother Rich standing at the school bus stop as kids. I watched the little spheres go about my face then my brothers while doing their dance in the street. Thinking back and remembering that day I said, that was you. They said, we've been watching you since you've been a child. God chose you and others a very long time ago. Watching the spheres shoot straight in the sky just before the bus came over the top I said, my God, I remember that day like it was yesterday. Nobody believed me back then and they all said I was seeing things and making it up. I knew it was real and I wasn't just seeing things. What were those flying balls? They replied, they were us watching people such as you all over your world. We've searched for believers who shared like backgrounds and qualities as yours. We need people similar to one another who actually believe in what they see and aren't afraid to share it with others. Thinking about how people reacted whenever I talked about UFOs and aliens I said, you know, I'll say it over and over, nobody's going to listen to me when I tell them about this. They never have before so what makes this time any different? All they ever did was make fun of me telling me I'm crazy. No, I really don't think this time will be any different from the others. Well, they said, this time you'll retain memory of us and what was said, so you'll have the experience to use. When convincing somebody, you'll have another very valuable tool. He pointed to the mark on my forehead, then said, we left a seal on your forehead, and somehow, someway you'll figure out a way of using it to prove our existence. Once you prove our existence, then the rest of what we said will be easier. Wondering why they're using me as a messenger instead of them just publicly doing it, I asked, why don't you just fly in and talk to everybody like you've done with me? That seems like it would be a lot easier and far more convincing than using me and others like me. They said, the officials of your world would never allow us to just fly in and talk to everybody. We've made attempts communicating with them in the past, but it was useless, as they treated us like invading aliens and attacked. A time will come when we will simply flood the skies, but it'd be better if the people of your world knew about it in advance. If we boldly barged in now, it would create a premature war and unnecessary numbers of causalities would soar out of hand. A fair warning to the people is all that's needed, so when our appearance takes place, many will know not to rebel against us, the good ones. This way your survival rate increases greatly and is much more favorable to God and us, as He wants to give everybody a chance. Sort of understanding what they wanted me to do, I said, all I can do is try, but I'll probably be the biggest laughing stock on this planet. They said, all we can expect is that you try. Instantly, the room lighting brightened up, making it impossible for me to see anything. Once again I became very tired and started going out as my body warmed up, like I was having hot flashes. As quickly as I warmed, I cooled back down and the lighting dimmed. Once again I was sitting in the driver's seat of my car, fully clothed, with my hands on the steering wheel. Without doing a thing, the shift lever slid into park, the engine started back up, my headlights came back on, and the cassette deck started playing again right where it left off. With the bright lights still behind me, I felt my car lift off the ground and move, from the field, back over to the shoulder. The lights behind dimmed, turning into what appeared as headlights, then suddenly their vehicle came around my driver's side and passed me. It was the strangest hover vehicle I'd ever seen, and it simply continued up the 101 freeway just like a car would. Placing my car in drive, I stepped on the gas, trying to catch up to it because I wanted to get a better look. Even with my car floored, the craft kept gaining speed and moving further away. It's almost as if they're toying with me and allowing me to see just enough to remember them. Just then I saw Alex from work pull in the lane next to me as he began following it too. He glanced over at me with a puzzled look, pointed at it, then shrugged his shoulders. I simply shook my head from side to side, motioning that I didn't know what it was. The two of us followed it for a short distance, then it shot out way ahead of us. Just before our exit, Alex pulled in front of me and I watched as the craft shot straight up, disappearing into the sky. I'd never seen anything move so fast in my life, and the scene was absolutely astounding. After reaching work, I pulled into the shop parking lot and I saw everybody already heading in for work as the 5-minute warning buzzer had just gone off. Apparently I must have lost 45 minutes because it's already time to go in and I should be 50 minutes early. I simply got out of my car and walked in with everybody else acting as if nothing happened. Alex saw me and asked, "What was that thing on the freeway?" "I don't know," I replied. "It sure was weird," he said. Rick, who'd been standing close by and listening in on the conversation, decided to chime in and asked, "Hey Mike, why was your car parked in the middle of the field? I stopped to see if you needed help, but you were nowhere around either. Where were you?" Not wanting to discuss it but realizing I had to come up with some sort of answer, I lied, then replied, "Oh yeah, the strangest thing happened. I was run off the road by this tow truck that came out of nowhere, turning into my lane." Noticing by their expressions they weren't falling for it, I went on with my story anyway and said, "Yeah, then the guy wound up being really nice and he felt so bad about running me off the road that he decided to help tow me out for free. I figured because my car was okay I'd just let the whole thing go. He was real cool and towed me back on the road." Their looks of astonishment and disbelief were priceless, but I kept a straight face the entire time. Rick started laughing hysterically, then said, "Hey Mike, I didn't see any tow truck and I didn't see you, all I saw was your car in the middle of the field." Just then the final work buzzer went off and it was time to punch in, so he said, "Maybe later you can fill me in with the truth." Punching his time card he added, "I'm still wondering how you got your car out into the middle of the field in the first place. Now you're telling me about a tow truck that wasn't there either." Letting out a sigh and still shaking his head from side to side he said, "What's even weirder is the fact you weren't anywhere around. I stopped to see if you needed help but, you weren't there. Where were you?" Being totally bewildered and not knowing what to say I replied, "I'm telling you guys, the car just sort of slid out there when the tow truck ran me off the road." Realizing how stupid my story was beginning to sound and trying to avoid any further questions I quickly said, "Hey, we'd better get to work." "Good idea," said Alex heading for his station. "It looks like I'd better watch out for those tow trucks, Mike." I knew they figured I was full of bull, but I really didn't know what else to say. Seriously, what was I going to do? Blurt out that I'd just been abducted by aliens who told me the Earth's going to be attacked soon. I knew better because they would have had me committed and declared me insane right then on the spot. I could just see their faces if I actually did tell them the truth. I was having a very difficult time dealing with all the stuff the aliens told me that morning, and if what they're telling me was true, then our planet was in for a world of trouble. I was quite sure the population would want to know that our attack was imminent, but the idea of me being the one telling them didn't sound so great. The more I thought about opening up and telling everybody, the less I liked it. I figured not many would believe me and most would ridicule, make fun and label me an absolute idiot laughingstock. The more I toyed with the idea of telling the truth, the less favorable it became. Throughout the day Alex and Rick kept giving me a bad time about my fabricated story regarding a tow truck running me off the road. I knew it sounded ridiculous, but knew if I told them the truth they'd never believe me anyway and I'd become the joke of the shop. Seriously, I personally have to admit it's a difficult pill to swallow, and if the situation was reversed and someone told me my story, I'd die laughing too. It was an awful position to be in, and I absolutely didn't know how to go about telling others about the falling sky. It was difficult enough to have been repeatedly abducted by aliens, and their expectations about me telling others sounded over the top. Apparently Rick had told others about my car in the field because co-workers kept coming up to me laughing and giving me a hard time about it. My supervisor Ben was making matters worse by his insidious bitching and complaining all day about the company policies and how unfair he thought they were. He kept going on and on, whining and moaning about how dissatisfied he was with his job and how much better it'd be if we were a union shop. Of course my buddy John was agreeing with him, and they kept asking me questions about unions, like I knew anything about them or even gave a care. Besides, I'd never been part of a union and knew nothing about them anyway. And to be truthful, my mind was about 1,000 miles away and really didn't want to hear about it. After arriving home I told Susie about what happened to me, and she had some news for me too. She said, "Michael, I'm pregnant again." Suddenly my mind drifted from what happened to me and focused on her as I asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said, "I'm positive." "Well, this is good news." I said, "How far along are you?" "According to my calculations," she said, "I'd say a little over a month." "Wow," I said, "congratulations." Giving me a kiss she said, "Congratulations to you too." 9 months went by. She finally gave birth via cesarean to our son Mike Jr. Chapter 15. 7 White Spheres. 4 years passed and I was having a difficult time losing the memories of all my abductions. It seemed like I was always waiting for the next time and was getting very tired of it. Susie's been extremely understanding about everything I've ever told her regarding them and never laughed, but has always been supportive like the good wife she is. She's never doubted me and believed the things I've told her, mainly because I'm not in the habit of lying. Our mutual understanding regarding the truth always worked out quite well, and it helped us maintain a good solid relationship. So when I told her about my problem of my abductions haunting me, she asked, What do you want to do about it? I was so tired of it constantly flooding my mind, so I replied, maybe we should think about moving out of the area, maybe finding a new home away from all these alien memories. I know I built this cottage from the ground up, but I don't want to live here anymore. Frankly, this place scares the hell out of me and I can't get all the stuff out of my mind. We should just go, leave all the bull behind. I agree, she said, a fresh start would do us all some good. We purchased a truck and trailer, then packed what we could fit into it, then left heading to Southern California. Since my abductions all happened in rural Sonoma County, I figured a highly populated area might have a diminishing effect stopping the phenomenon. For quite a while, it seemed to work because they actually stopped bothering me and I was beginning to forget. About 4 years later, I was outside on a warm summer night around 10:30 p.m. enjoying the evening. The sky was crystal clear, making all the stars visible, and I was relaxed while my wife was working on one of her crafts inside. I looked up into the sky to the south and saw 7 white round spheres about 5 times the size of basketballs hovering above, heading my direction. They were very softly glowing white and moving at a very slow speed, almost crawling as they progressed my way. Without taking my eyes off them, I yelled, "Susie, get out here now, quick, hurry." She had been inside and was in the middle of something when she yelled, "What do you need, honey?" "I'm really busy." "Get out here now or you'll miss it." I yelled, watching as they got closer and closer. Stepping out and being frustrated that she was disturbed, she asked, "What is it, honey?" I pointed up to them, then said, "Look, right there in the sky above us. Look at the white spheres." Glancing up and noticing them as they floated, she was shocked and asked, "Dang, what are they?" Knowing the answer, I quickly replied, "It's them." "It's who?" she asked. "The aliens," I replied. "They've found me and they're back." We watched as one after another, they shot straight up into the sky, turning into stars. "Damn!" I cried, "now I'm really in for it." Wondering what I was talking about, she asked, "You're in for what?" Watching them transform, she said, "That's weird, it looks like they've turned into stars." "What are you in for?" Answering her, I replied, "I'm in trouble for not doing what they told me to do. Because I didn't run around like an idiot telling everyone the sky is falling and inform them that we're headed for a galactic war between good and evil, I'm in Dutch with the aliens." "Well, that sure would be odd," she asked. "Do you think they've returned to punish you for not minding them?" Being frightened, I replied, "I know that's the reason why they're here. I completely ignored their instruction during my last visit and now they're back to remind me. I never thought they'd find me all the way down here in Southern California." Staring at them floating in the heavens, I said, "I was bad and never warned anybody about this battle. I was supposed to tell people about a huge heavenly war and I never did. I'm telling you, they're here to punish me for not doing what they said." She said, "I know how badly you want it all to go away, and maybe if you satisfy their requests it might just do that." Placing her arm around me, she said, "You know what you need to do, you need to listen to what they instructed you to do and start telling people about them and the apocalyptic battle between their forces and how we're the stage for it all." I had no idea how to go about warning people without looking like an insane moron, so I asked, How do I tell them?" "They'll never listen to me, I'll lose all respect and dignity and I'm likely to be declared mentally unstable." "Can I offer a suggestion?" she asked. Knowing I needed advice, I replied, "Yes, I don't know how to do this without all the labeling side effects." She said, "Well, people write books every day and some of their writings are outlandish, but they keep their respect while doing it. Why don't you keep your dignity and simply write a book telling people about your experiences and introduce this battle this way? What you're talking about kind of sounds like the Battle of Armageddon, the fight between good and evil, in the Bible. I think it'd make great reading and you'd be fulfilling their requests." "I'll try," I said, "but I don't know if I can pull it off." Reassuring me, she said, "You can do it and you know it. Realizing she had a great idea, I said, "Yeah, I guess I could. It might be hard, but I could get it done." Wondering how to circulate it and wanting her suggestions, I asked, "How could I get it out to the people?" After thinking a moment, she replied, "Maybe after you do it on the computer we could print it really cheap and you could pass it out for free down at the pier while I sell t-shirts." Agreeing it was another great thought, I said, "You know, that's not a bad idea at all. It might actually work and it's a great way of getting their message out. Heck, who knows, it might actually keep the aliens of my back." There were sudden flashes of light in the sky right above where the aliens went, and pointing them out, she said, "Well, look at that. I think your friends approve of the idea. They're sending you a message." Glancing up and witnessing it too, I got an eerie feeling as if they were listening in on our conversation. I was freaked by the idea of being spied on and made sure they heard me as I said, "You know, babe, that's a fantastic idea and I'll do it. I'm not promising it'll turn out great, but if it means I can live my life in peace, I'll give it my best." Placing her arms around me and comforting me, she said, "I would if I were you." Giving a hug, she said, "You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain." With a sigh and a yawn, I said, "I'll start tomorrow, but right now I'm really tired. Let's go to bed." We headed back and then watched television while falling asleep. The next day I started working, typing on my little handout booklet. The work was terrible, but I didn't even care because I was just fulfilling their requirements. I wasn't looking for a bestseller and simply wanted the project off my chest. The strangest thing was, even though the work was bad, for some reason the story itself was very interesting. Writing it helped me mentally deal with my experiences and I found it extremely therapeutic. Getting it on paper was probably one of the best things I ever did for myself physiologically, and it really was a great idea. When finished, the booklet was approximately 63 pages long and I titled it Explanations. I printed one copy on my home printer, then brought it to the copy shop and ran off a bunch more. It was almost impossible to read because I reduced the text so small, condensing it to squeeze a page onto 1/4 page. We fit a lot into a little area, but man, it sure made for difficult reading and required a magnifying glass to see it. Making it so small was the only way we could afford to make as many copies needed in order to hand out to the general public. I personally never thought anybody would ever read it, but we finished making all the copies, stapled them all together, then placed them in boxes. Below is what the little book looked like. That Friday we went to the Huntington Beach Pier and handed them out to people along the beach. At first I was extremely embarrassed, so I didn't wear a tie-dye t-shirt because I didn't want people associating me with Susie's tie-dyes. I figured it'd be bad for business, having some crazy guy passing out a booklet like this. After handing out about 50 of them, I became more comfortable doing it and began striking up conversations with interested people. Eventually, Susie began placing them in bags with shirts as she sold them. The way I accomplished the task was kind of awkward, but I didn't care because I simply wanted it over with. Many people asked what it was about, then I'd reply, "It's about our planet's future and what we needed to know about it." I figured most of them thought I was some sort of environmental nut writing something about our suffering ecosystem. Most of them were really gracious about it and they'd tell me they'd check into it. It took us a few Fridays of handing them out until they were gone, and when we were finished I felt totally relieved. To my surprise, people actually came back to the shirt stand to talk with me about the book. Many of them were actually curious about it and wanted to know more about my experiences. Many of them approached me telling me they'd been looking for me and had some questions. Others returned asking for more copies and I'd tell them just go run them off at a copy machine. Many wanted to know if I'd written any other books regarding the same subject matter. Others told me they had to read it with a magnifying glass but really loved it. I had requests for me to write more, but next time if I made them bigger they'd buy it. Of course I thanked them, then related how I was finished writing about that subject matter and explained how I didn't want to keep reliving it. I also had others come back telling me I was completely mad and delusional, then rant and rave how I had my nerve placing that garbage in their bag. At that point, I didn't care anymore because I did what I was told and the mission was complete. You know, after completing the task my life became a whole lot simpler and I no longer worried about being harassed by aliens. I did what they asked and we were finally free to move back home to Sonoma County, so that's what we did. Chapter 16 Discovery of the Holy Roman Empire. After returning home I remembered the aliens telling me about my great-great-grandfather, so I wanted to know more about my ancestry. I contacted my second cousin who lived in San Francisco and he was gracious enough to send me our family tree. Below is a scanned page which refers to my great-great-grandmother Anna of Austria. After doing research on Franz Joseph I found he was the only king who was in power in Austria during 1881, the year my great-great-grandmother Anna became pregnant. Digging further I found his son, Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria, and seeing his picture I realized I looked very much like him. Although I'm older than him in this picture, I still bear the family resemblance. I remember my grandmother telling me that her grandmother Anna worked for the royal family as a chambermaid and became pregnant by the prince. Her words were, after grandmother got pregnant the bastard sent her away and married some other trollop. My grandmother Irene wasn't very happy about the situation because she told me, he, Rudolf, didn't love his wife and wanted to be with my grandma. They forced him to marry that other filthy greedy bitch just for money. Prima facie Rudolf wasn't allowed to engage in marriage out of love but was forced due to political requirements. Here are more photos showing the family resemblances. This first picture is left to right, Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria, King of Hungary, and his great-great-granddaughter, also my mom Helene Davis. Pictured above is left, Crown Prince Rudolf of the Holy Roman Empire 1881. Middle, great-great-grandson of Rudolf and Anna of Austria, Michael Davis, author of Falling Sky. Anna worked as a chambermaid to the royal family and became pregnant by the prince in 1881. She was sent to Kansas where the royals paid an old friend to marry her. Rudolf married Stephanie of Belgium, then had another affair with 16-year-old Mary Vestra 7 years later in 1889. Finding out she was pregnant he shot her, the unborn child, and himself the same year at the hunting lodge. Right, great-great-great-grandfather of Michael Davis, author of Falling Sky, Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria, 1848 to 1916, and King of Hungary, 1867 to 1916, who divided his empire into a dual monarchy, in which Austria and Hungary coexisted as equal partners. In 1879 he formed an alliance with Prussian-led Germany, and in 1914 his ultimatum to Serbia led Austria and Germany into World War I. He's also the father of Crown Prince Rudolf and was married to his first cousin Elizabeth, also Rudolf's mother. Pictured below is left, Emperor Franz Joseph's brother Maximilian of Mexico, while right is one of my uncle John Payer, also Maximilian's great-great-nephew. Below left, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Habsburg, cousin of Crown Prince Rudolf, and right is my older brother Richard Davis, great-great-grandson of Crown Prince Rudolf. World War I was started with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austria-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914 by a member of the Black Hand. Left, Julius Caesar, right, Falling Sky author Michael Davis, descendant of Julius Caesar. Above left, Gaius Julius Caesar, July 100 BC, March 44 BC. Caesar was a Roman general, statesman, consul and notable author of Latin prose. He played a critical role in the events leading to the demise of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. Right, Michael Davis, author of Falling Sky, Chapter 17 The Unexplained, explained on August 24, 2013. While on our way to a family wedding out in the country, we made a stop at an old abandoned barn along the way. It was the same barn where my old dark room used to be and I wanted photos of it. Hopping out of the car at approximately 1:41 p.m. I went in with my camera ready to shoot. Already knowing what shots I wanted, I went in prepared. First, I wanted a shot of my old dark room. Second, I wanted a shot of where I saw the alien, described in my book chapter Dark Room Fears. Third, I also wanted a shot of the horse stall where my dad almost killed me once but was stopped by some unknown force. I immediately walked over to the horse stall, then snapped one shot of it, and being it was so dark the flash went off. Afterwards I snapped another of the backside of my dark room, down the hall, and the camera flashed again. Next I walked to the front side of my dark room and snapped a couple of photos of that too. Finally I snapped the rest of the corridor leading towards the rear of the barn where I originally spotted the alien. According to the camera SD card, I snapped all of the shots within 1 minute. After placing the camera back in the case, I quickly exited the barn. I estimated my total time in was about 1.5 to 2 minutes tops. Quickly returning to the car and hopping in, my wife Susie asked, "What took you so long?" "So long," I replied, "I was only in there 2 minutes at the most." With that my daughter asked, "You were in there a lot more than 2 minutes, what's going on?" Susie, who was obviously keeping track of the time, remarked, "Dear, you left the car at 1:41 and you got back in at 1:46, you were gone for 5 minutes. Arguing the point, I said, "I couldn't have been, I say it's 2 minutes tops." None of us could agree how long I was actually in there, and because it was getting later we decided to head for the wedding. Even though I knew there was no way I could have been in there 5 minutes, I decided to give up anyway and throw in the towel. I knew we were cutting it short and needed to get going, even though there was 3 minutes of missing time still unexplained. After the wedding and arriving home, I decided to upload the pictures from my camera into the computer. While examining the first shot, which was a shot of the horse stall where my dad almost killed me as a kid, I noticed spheres or orbs everywhere. At first, I didn't think too much about it until I saw another shot of the hallway behind my old darkroom which also had orbs. Upon enlarging it, I noticed what appeared to be an alien face in the orange sphere. In the same shot, right below the orb, I spotted the tag board from my old 6th grade science project still stapled to the darkroom wall. I affixed it there over 40 years ago, trying to block out light leaks in the cracks of the boards. The original report was about space and included a large picture of our solar system, a photo of the Apollo 11 crew including Neil Armstrong, commander, Edwin Aldrin lunar module pilot, Michael Collins command module pilot, and a photo viewing Earth from the moon, but all the pictures were missing. Here's a newspaper article and picture of the original project taken by the Argus Courier newspaper dated April 25, 1972. Although the paper misspelled my last name, it still contains the project. Please note the title, Space, is still there, as is part of the solar system poster. Remembering something familiar about the first picture of the horse stall, I decided to further examine it too. Taking a closer look, I noticed the orbs were set up just like our solar system and included an orange glowing sun in the center. Please note the planets Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Charon, Neptune, Pluto, 2003 UB313 and Ceres are all within their belts. I also noticed more orbs or planets that weren't listed in our solar system, which brought me to the conclusion they were trying to send me a message. They were letting me know that the reason we can't see these planets or find other life within our system was, they existed in a parallel/dimensional universe which is invisible to us. I also realized they were still trying to communicate with me by displaying the same solar system that I did on the wall. In conclusion, I finally knew who and what the force was that protected me from my dad when I was a kid. I now understood who picked him up and kicked him across that very same stall. They were waiting for my return and knew that I'd be there in that barn that day and wanted to give me some sort of proof. I find their way of communicating very interesting, and the fact that they're still interested in me over 48 years later even more fascinating. Chapter 18 Security Camera. On February 13, 2014 at approximately 8:20 p.m. my wife and I were inside our fifth-wheel trailer when we heard a ruckus going on outside. Apparently 2 of our neighbors were having an argument over a parking place. We tried to ignore the fight until it began escalating. Wanting to know what was going on, I opened our front door and looked out. Spotting the door open, one of the two men yelled, "Mike, he's got a gun, call 911. I quickly closed the door, then turned on my security camera system and cried, "Susie, call 911. The fight was getting louder and louder, so in fear of stray bullets I told my wife to lie on the floor. We waited, and waited until finally the sheriff's department arrived on the scene. We waited inside and watched the monitor as they surrounded the home of the man with the gun. It wasn't long before a deputy approached us asking if we had footage of the incident on our system. I informed him that I wasn't sure because I didn't know if it would capture across the street in such low light. He told me if we found anything to please let them know, so I told him I would. After it was over and everyone left, Susie and I decided to go through the video footage and see what we had. We viewed it over and over and weren't able to visually see if the man actually had a gun. However, after viewing so many times, Susie pointed to the upper left portion of the screen, then asked, "What is that?" She was pointing to what appeared to be a white face, so I replied, "I'm not sure, it looks like a face, so let's check it out in the computer." After transferring the video file to our computer and examining it further, I noticed there was indeed a face in the upper left corner, and it was in every single video frame. The upper image below is a split-screen JPEG taken from the actual video recording, while the bottom portion is an enlargement of the face in the corner. The next image below is an enlargement of the face showing details. The face is behind the security light pole, which you can see running up the center of the face, and it's located in front of the trees behind it. After further examining the face, I realized I'd seen it before, and I remembered where it was that I saw it. The next picture is from this book you're reading called Falling Sky, and it was actually the original book cover, which was copywritten in 2011 and part of my original submission to the Library of Congress Copyright Office. Using a photo editing program, I inserted the face from the video next to the faces I saw when I was 4½ and noticed they were almost identical to one another. I was shocked to see it once again 49 years later, and I realized they were there protecting us from harm during the almost shooting. They actually stopped the incident from turning into a horrific incident. Many people who've seen this face have told me it's evil, and all I can reply to that is, it produced a favorable outcome to a potentially deadly incident, and evil doesn't do that. If they were evil, that gun would have been fired and someone hurt or killed. The incident went down without incident, therefore producing good deeds. I examined that face over and over again, realizing it reminded me of another face. I searched the internet for the face on Mars, and the below picture is a result of my search. There are great resemblances between the two faces, the face in the video and the face of Mars. Finally, the picture below is my new book cover, and it represents the face of the past remaining the same as the face of the future. The upper portion of my cover is the enlargement taken from my security camera, while the lower portion are the faces that told me they were my parents back in 1965, in the atrium in Lucas Valley, California, when I was 4½ It appears my parents have been watching out for my safety and gave me a photo of them in my video.